What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Now, today I've got for you 3 hours or so of some of the very best Reddit stories of all time. Without further ado, sit back, relax, get ready to chill out. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that button. Let's go. Apparently, my friend owns an entire city. I planned a trip to a particular tourist-friendly city I really like visiting because of the history and number of things to do while there. I know someone who lives in the area, and when I mentioned I was planning to spend a few days there, it was suggested that I stay in her guest room to save on hotel costs. This friend has some mental health issues, mainly undiagnosed bipolar, I suspect, but diagnosed depression and anxiety, and can be a little flaky. So I didn't cancel my reservation at the hotel, as I didn't prepay and could always cancel later. I didn't tell her that though. Fast forward to a week before the trip, and she tells me she's not feeling mentally able to have someone stay with her. She's feeling anxious, so she wants to be alone, and she tells me not to come. I took that to mean I couldn't stay with her, which was fine. I still had my hotel reservation, and since it was in the city centre, it would be more convenient location-wise anyway. So I fly into the city and get an Uber to my hotel, then get settled. I texted her and asked how she was feeling that day. She said she was okay and not feeling very anxious that particular day. So I texted back, "That's great. I'm glad you're having a good day. Do you feel like getting dinner tonight? If not, that's alright. I thought it would just be nice to catch up while I'm here, but I understand if you don't feel up to it. Just let me know." A few minutes later, she calls me and immediately starts screaming and shrieking at me that she had told me not to come and that I had no right to be there or to put her in the position of having to entertain when she doesn't want to. I calmly told her I didn't expect her to entertain me at all if she didn't want to, and that I was perfectly happy to just explore by myself each day and relax in my hotel every night. No obligation for her to even see me if she didn't want to. She yelled at me again that I was a horrible person for invading her privacy and coming to the city when she told me not to. I responded that whether or not I stayed with her or even saw her wasn't a factor in my decision to visit the city for a long weekend. I was in a hotel and happy to be there, so I could come and go as I please. She's now doing some thinking about our friendship and deciding whether she can remain friends with someone who goes against her wishes like that. Yeah, I don't think she really needs to put much thought into that because I'm done with the friendship myself. I don't need a friend who tries to act like she can keep a person from visiting a tourist-heavy city just because she doesn't want to see them or anyone else. The entitlement she's shown is pretty alarming, even taking into account her mental health issues. Expecting someone to cancel a trip they planned without you being a factor. Wow. Now look guys, seriously, I'm not trying to belittle this girl's mental health issues, but I really don't think this has anything to do with them at all. Like OP has made it very clear, there is zero obligation to see her, she's just touring the city. It's not that deep, but no, this girl is saying that you're not allowed into my entire city? Very, very weird. Alright, now moving on to our second entitled story. Misunderstood girlfriend tried to get me in trouble. So, one of my older brothers has this entitled girlfriend that often gets her way. For example, if the majority of us want to play a board game, she'll cry about it to my brother that she doesn't want to play, and tell my brother not to play, so we end up not playing because there's not enough players. Whenever she comes over to visit, she would make herself at home. Seriously, I saw her using my PlayStation without my permission, and when I asked her to stop, she said it's okay since we're basically family. She doesn't like to share things, and on holidays like Christmas, she often asks for presents from all of us, even my younger sister, who doesn't even have a job, because supposedly, again, we're family. Okay, now that you understand how entitled she is, let's get to the part that annoyed me about her the most. My older brother is called Man. It's pronounced as man. That's right, you address him as Man because his name is Man. So one day during a gathering, we were talking about the silly things that Man did recently because we all know he's the type to do funny but stupid things. And I commented, that sounds like such a Man thing to do. The girlfriend blew up. She was bright red, swung her long blonde hair as if it was a weapon, and glared at me as if I was the biggest scum in the world. That's such a disgusting thing to say. You're so sexist. What he did has nothing to do with his gender, and you should apologize. So it took me a while to understand why she was blowing up like this, until I finally realized, oh snap, she thought I meant his gender, not his name. Oh no, sorry, I think you misunderstood. Oh shut it, I can't believe mum raised a sexist pig like you. Now she meant my mum, but she addresses her as mum as well, because apparently we're family. What? No, seriously, you misunderstood. I should have you disowned for your toxic thinking. Once I tell mum about this, she's going to have my back, and she'll beat the heck out of you for your narrow mind. I was just kind of speechless. As she continued ranting on, I looked at my younger sister as a way to say, is she for real? Now my sister knows of course that I meant man, my brother, not man as in man, so she just thought this was funny and shrugged and just kept watching her going on a full rant. After she finished her long speech, she marched out of the room and grabbed my brother and my mum and told them what I said, and that I should be punished for my narrow thinking. My brother and mother knew immediately that I meant his name, so they tried to tell her that, but she refused to believe them because she knew what she heard. With my mum and brother in tow, she came back to the living room and screeched that I'm in major trouble and that mum is for sure on her side. My mum rolled her eyes and spoke in our native language, so she couldn't hear what we were talking about. Also, our language can sound a bit mean if we put in a lot of the accents and exaggeration in a loud voice. So, mum said to me in our native language, "Pretend I'm yelling at you." Why? Because she's crazy and she won't shut up and I've got dinner to cook. Well, can't we just tell her the misunderstanding? Do you really want to try? I then proceed to stomp out the room as she smirked with her arms folded. During dinner, we all gathered at the dining table and the girlfriend kept smirking as she eyes me down and kept making indirect comments about me. My sister then leans into my ear and whispered, "Man is planning on dumping her." And I choked on my noodles, trying to suppress my laughter. The girlfriend looked confused as to why I was covering my mouth, but I just kept stifling my laugh. A week later, Man announced he broke up with her and seemed like a happy and free man. Badums. Well, hey man, I'm sorry you had to go through that. If I'm honest, I think you managed the situation really well, dealing with your girlfriend in an appropriate manner and then dumping her. Good job. And now for our third entitled parent story. Entitled dad / deadbeat dad legally steals $65,000 from daughter about to start college. This is not my story, but another post reminded me of a friend that this happened to. Entitled dad with a wife, son and daughter, both under 10 years old, has an affair, gets young girlfriend pregnant, dumps his family for her and the baby not yet born. Despite being ordered to pay child support to his 2 older children, he rarely pays. And if he does, it's $100 or $2 tossed at them a couple of times a year. He only sees them on holidays at his parents' house, but occasionally calls during their birthday month or a few weeks after. Twice or 3 times in 5 years, he called with less than an hour's notice and picked them up for burgers and hot dogs at a drive-in restaurant where you sit in the car and a server brings your food out on a tray that hooks on the car window. Meanwhile, the young girlfriend decides raising one baby is all she's up for, so she dumps his butt. And of course, he treats her and his new baby daughter the same as his ex-wife and older children. Years pass. The new baby daughter is 15 and her mother is killed in a car wreck. The court orders her to live with the dad. Why did the entitled dad fight for her in court when he hadn't cared less about her in 15 years? Well, it was a commercial truck that hit and killed her mother, and the company was desperate to make an out-of-court settlement to avoid a lawsuit. The daughter hates her dad, but she's powerless to defy the courts. The settlement is accepted for about $65,000. The money goes into a college fund, but of course, the entitled dad is on the account because of US law, and you know what happens next. The next couple of years are rocky, but the daughter is a quiet type who avoids confrontation, so she mostly just studies and endures, waiting to get out and go to college. It comes time to go to college, and she discovers that her dad had cleaned out the accounts and closed it. When she confronted him, he did the classic reaction of yelling, calling her names, saying she owed him, etc. Surprise ending, she and her older half-sister became good friends as adults, Unfortunately, the older brother turned out to be a lot like his dad. Oh my, well, I thought the title was shady at first, but that was even worse than I'd expected. Jesus. You're telling me the only reason this dad came back into his daughter's life was because her mum was tragically killed and he thought he could make money out of it? I mean, that is mind-blowing entitlement right there. Wow. And now moving on to our final story of today's episode. Karen doesn't realise that I'm a citizen, tries to enslave wife and me with fake debts. This is a story about somebody much more well off than me, expecting me to meet their financial obligations, while demanding that I falsify medical paperwork and commit insurance fraud while withholding pay. Basically, my wife and I had just immigrated back to the US and needed jobs and a place to stay. We thought we'd struck gold when a fabulously wealthy woman hired myself as a groundskeeper and maintenance guy, and my wife as a cook and maid for her elderly parents. The pay was low, but part of it involved being able to live rent-free in the second house on the estate. The elderly couple were extremely senile, but still the sweetest old folks you can imagine. It was a really nice property, so for a few months, everything was great. Then, about 3 months in, my wife noticed the pantry, which was itself bigger than our living room, was not being restocked by the grocery delivery company that normally did these things. We contacted our employer, who flew into a rage that managing that sort of thing was our responsibility, so she'd cancelled the delivery service without telling us. It became apparent that she fully expected us to notice and take care of it ourselves. When I asked her how she expected us to buy groceries for her parents when she didn't even tell us she cancelled the service, she became extremely irate. Direct quotes, "Then why the F do I sign a check to each of you every week?" Yeah, this dog earnestly thought we should be using our personal paychecks, which were not very big, to pay for her parents' upkeep. After much deliberation, she grudgingly left us a credit card to go out and buy groceries for her parents, which added to our workload at no extra pay, but we didn't have anywhere else to stay and no other job lined up, so we just dealt with it. Well, another few months go by and she contacts us again. She wants us to sign something. The paperwork shows up and it requests for medical documentation from an insurance company. The chick wants us to attach our timesheets to it, sign it, and send it back to the insurance company. Well, I read it and it becomes apparent she has elder care insurance to pay for live-in nursing services and has told them that we are nurses so she can try and get them to pay our wages. I contact her and inform her that we have not provided medical care, we're not licensed to, and we're not going to fill out the paperwork. Cue mother of all poop storms. Karen goes nuts, screaming into the phone about how much she has done for us and that we owe her, how she will report that we're neglecting her parents, and then call immigration on us and have us deported. I don't think she ever realised that I am a citizen and my wife immigrated legally. I tell her that what she's asking us to do is fraud, and that I'd rather get fired than arrested for a felony. I tell her she has 90 days to find a replacement for us and that we'll be moving out. Things devolve into her screaming about how much money she has and how she's besties with the cops and has a bunch of expensive lawyers to sue us with. I suggest that she ask one of those lawyers how they feel about defending her for insurance fraud, and then I hang up. My wife and I continue our services for the old folks while looking for a new place, because they were actually super nice and the situation wasn't their fault. They were also very senile, mistaking us for other people they knew, forgetting they had kids, etc. So they can't be held accountable for their daughter's behaviour, as they lack any ability to intervene. Then, instead of a paycheck, I get a bill for the last 8 months of rent and a note that she isn't paying our wages until we pay me back for everything you owe me, plus interest. She had valued the rent of the second house provided in our contract at more than she paid us monthly, so we'd never actually be able to pay it off. Yeah, this dog actually tried to make us into indentured servants. So, without responding, I continue performing my duties, studiously keeping logs on our hours and retaining all the receipts for how much more we owed her. 90 days go by without a paycheck. We purchased groceries using the card she provided, which she added to our debts. We document everything. About a week before the 90 day, we contact 2 government agencies. First, the State Department of Labor to report exploitation, and second, Adult Protective Services to inform them that an elderly couple that requires caretaking are going to no longer have caretakers, and that their daughter has refused to provide it. Then we call her and inform her that she is going to be receiving some phone calls from these agencies shortly and should probably contact her attorney. There was about a 60-second dead silence on the phone, then hysterical laughter as she hung up. Okay, not the response I expected, but screw it. One more week and we're gone. 8 hours later, she shows up in the driveway in a rental car. This dog bought a one-way plane ticket to come out to the estate and report us to the cops for trespassing on the property. This of course doesn't work because we've got a tenancy contract, and if she wants us gone, she has to utilize the legal eviction process. She then tries to claim we are illegal aliens, which a quick glance in our wallets at our IDs by the cops proves false. She starts to shriek at them about if they know who she is or how expensive her lawyers are. The cops have that unique expression of irritated and amused that cops dealing with some dumb stuff they aren't allowed to comment on get, and advise her not to talk to us or attempt to enter or go near the guest house. She moves into their house that night and presumably takes over our duties. I would go out on the balcony every day for the week before I left to drink my coffee and smile as I stared across the big, luxurious lawn to see her standing in the picture window, arms crossed, glaring death at me. To make a long story short, the expensive lawyer she has convinced her to pay our back wages with additional interest for violating state labor laws by withholding them. It turns out that trying to enforce actual slavery is still illegal after all. Who knew? Like, what is this woman playing at? She should be locked up. That is genuinely modern day slavery. If you were charging someone rent and then paying their wages at less than the rent, how can they ever escape? Seriously? Like what is this? This is like a modern day prison as well. Ridiculous. Lock her up and throw away the bloody key. A petty microphone cold war with a music teacher. This was back in mid-2019, right when I graduated from high school. My school hosts annual last day of school concerts for students, and frankly, our school is notorious for its very unreliable sound system and a lack of musical equipment. There's always something either missing or broken, so borrowing equipment from students is common and somewhat expected. Yeah, a strange first impression of your school there, not gonna lie. On the day of, an 8th grade music teacher, let's call him Mr. Bennis, whom I never really met before, asked if he could borrow my microphone for the concerts. They needed extra. Now, I usually lend my music stuff to the school concerts anyway, and he knows this too, so no biggie, he could have it. They always come back in one piece, and the school faculty are quite responsible with borrowed stuff. Except for this one time for some reason, while I couldn't attend the concerts, it came back with a huge dent on the steel mesh. The next day, Mr. Bennis returned my dented mic nonchalantly and didn't even mention the very obvious dent there. He just handed it to me, said thank you, and went back to his phone. I was the one to bring it up and told him it definitely wasn't there when I lent it to him. He said something along the lines of, "Oh, I'm sorry. It was probably one of the performers who dropped it. That happens all the time with kids." Haha. I told him it was still his responsibility, even if he didn't drop it himself. He replied with, don't worry, it still works though. It was gonna dent sometime anyway. No musician is without one. Ha ha ha. As vocally annoyed at him as I was, he was right. Most dynamic microphones drop all the time, and the mesh will get dented eventually. It still works fine, and you don't need to replace it. I probably shouldn't have lent something somewhat expensive to someone I don't really know either. Still, I was extremely annoyed. The next day, which was also the last day of school, I waltzed into the music room that he is responsible for, sneakily snatched a pristine music room microphone, brought it to a classroom with no one in it, and made it drop 5 feet right onto the ceramic floor. There was a loud clang upon impact, and sure enough, it was quite dented, but it still works just fine. Besides, that was my very last day of school, and no one saw me go in or out of those 2 rooms, so all eyes should be on Mr. Bennis about that dented school microphone. Or no one would care about some dented mic. Whatever. Still satisfied I could get an eye for an eye, or steel mesh for a steel mesh, I guess. Oh, they break all the time, do they? I'm not sure that's true, and I know that because I've got one right here. Look at this, right? This is a little wind protector, plosive remover thing that you put on mics. This is what we're referencing here, the steel cage around the microphone, which is inside. As you can see, not dented, yeah? Pretty pristine. Not gonna lie, these microphones that are nice, dynamic microphones, they do cost a lot of money. So for Mr. Bennis, weird name, but anyway, for Mr. Bennis to be going off on one, saying that they're not that important and they break all the time, no, they don't. And now moving on to our second story of petty revenge. They asked if I saw a phone laying in the streets. Nope, not in the streets, hadn't seen it. I moved here a few months ago. On one side, my neighbor is a cool little old man on the corner of the block. On the other side is a family with at least one kid in their late teens, maybe early 20s. At least past high school, because school is back in session and I see them around on weekdays. Could be more than one, but there are quite a few that age who come and go, and I don't know them. They live in a massive McMansion and have several cars between them. The rest of the block are houses built in the 1950s or so. Not bad homes at all, but nothing huge. It's not a busy street, zero traffic, and the houses are spaced pretty far apart. The neighbours' teens were walking through my backyard and the old man's backyard to get to the street around the corner, sometimes at night. We've got 2 young kids who go to bed at around 8:30, and the youngest has issues that severely affect her sleep, causing her to be up all night at times. Sometimes they were woken up by the neighbours' teens walking through at like 11 PM, talking, laughing, or playing music on their phones. Part of the reason we chose this house is how quiet and spacey the neighborhood is. After a couple of weeks of this happening, about 4 or 5 times, I went to go and talk to the neighbors. The dad answered the door. I say something like, "Hey, how you doing? I'm OP, I live over here." He just says, what do you need?" So I told him that I've got 2 kids who go to bed early and that his kids wake them up when they walk through the yard. He said he'd tell them to quiet down. I said, "No, they're coming through in the middle of the night. They should stay out of my yard." He said, "Only at night?" just smugly. His expression and tone really annoyed me. So I said, "I mean frickin' ever." He made a huh noise and shut the door, so I walked back home. A few days go by and I hear the teens one evening around dusk, 4 of them heading to their house. So I go outside and I ask, "Is this your yard?" They didn't even say anything. They just kept walking and started laughing. A couple of hours later, my wife was in the kitchen and sees a couple of them in the old man's yard, close to our yard, with a flashlight pointed at the ground. We watched them for a few minutes, and when they come into our yard, I go out back with my flashlight, shine it at them, and said, "I'm about to call the freaking cops." They ran back to their house. The next morning I was mowing and I find what they were looking for. An iPhone, looked new, no power. I pocket it and keep mowing. Around noon, my bell rings. It's the mum. The dad was standing at the end of my driveway. I guess he didn't want to talk to me. "Hey, my daughter lost her phone while she was out walking last night. Have you seen it around? Like in the street or anything?" "Nope, haven't seen any phones in the streets," I reply. "Well, have you seen one anywhere else?" "I can't say I have, but if I find one in the streets, I'll let you know." I can see the gears in her brain working. She doesn't look happy. "By the way, I talked to your husband a few days ago about your kids being in my yard. They didn't listen, so if it happens again, I'm calling the police." "Are you serious?" "They're waking up my kids and this is private property. I am very serious." She makes the same huh noise that her husband did, walks off the porch and back to him. I guess she told him what I said, because he made angry noises that I couldn't understand from the porch. They walk away and I go back inside. I know some newer phones have tracking, so a little later when I was running errands, I dropped it in a trash can in a gas station bathroom. If they tracked it, maybe they went and dug it out. Good luck to them. It was one of those 50-gal cans and full of who knows what, and I dropped it down the side so it would slide to the bottom. They haven't been in my backyard since. Again, just like the first story, completely reasonable revenge. It's one thing making noise in your residential area late at night, but it's another going on someone else's private property and doing it. That is just crazy. Yes, OP can call the police if he wants to, come on. But seriously though, imagine going on Find My iPhone, tracking down your phone, realizing it's probably in this horrible bin, and just having to chuck your hand in there and hope for the best. That is disgusting, but it's so justified. And now moving on to our third story of petty revenge. IT manager made my life a misery, so we auto-insulted him hundreds of times a day. This happened a few years ago, and by few, I mean a lot. I was a student in the mid-80s, and I got a job for the summer working for a major electronics company. It was low-skill, boring grunt work, but it was a foot in the door and it paid good money. I worked in the IT department, next to a very noisy room filled with very wide dot matrix printers that buzzed and chattered all day long. It was the central printer room for the VAX system that we used back then. Now, one of my jobs was to take the huge fan-fold printouts, each stack was about 2 by 1 feet and about a foot high, and separate it into individual print jobs, lay them out on a table for people to pick up, and also to refill the printer with new paper. The noise drove me nuts, so I closed the door. The IT manager found out and insisted that the door stay open so that I could hear when a printer was out of paper. The printer gave out a series of beeps when the paper had run out. Let's just call this guy Dick because A, his name was Richard, and B, he really was a dick, a real petty tyrant. Hey guys, it's not swearing because, Dick is a name. In a nearby room was Bob. Bob was an odd guy. He was an absolute hippie, a relic from the 60s. Bob was a slacker. He appeared to do the minimum work necessary to stay employed, but he was also a genius, a hobby electronics experimenter, proper old school coder, COBOL and Fortran, radio amateur. He wrote for electronics magazines, designed and built his own computers, radios, and hi-fi gear. He would happily fix any electronics you brought him and refuse payments, and he was the go-to person for almost anyone in the company with a technical problem. The odder the problem, the better he liked it. Senior engineers would come to Bob with a question and go away with an answer. Sometimes he was seconded to a project to consult, and on more than one occasion co-authored a technical paper and was named on a patent or two. Most of the time, Bob didn't want any recognition or fuss, but usually you got to hear through the grapevine that it was his work. He liked his little room and liked to be his own boss. I like Bob. He was a genuinely nice guy. He had a lot of power in the company through a lot of favors, but he never wielded it. He was always helpful to anyone who asked, from MD to summer students like me. In fact, he really liked students and often mentored us when we had a problem or just taught us how to work the system. I told Bob about the noise in passing. Bob went away and designed a remote out-of-paper system that would indicate a paper outage on a light board where I sat. He didn't have to, but Bob liked a problem to work on. Dick rejected it out of hand. I resigned myself to a summer of noise, but Bob just quietly turned to a new solution. Bob proposed an improvement to the printing system to Dick. The print header was a line of hash symbols, the print job name, the username of the person who printed it, and another line of hash symbols. Sometimes you could pick up on the hash symbols and sometimes not. It was hit or miss. Bob had experimented with a mix of text and ASCII block characters and came up with a distinctive song that the printers could make by printing apparent gibberish. Based on his amateur radio experience, he theorized that even someone untutored in Morse can recognize a Morse code phrase very quickly, and the ear picks up on the phrase even when not actively listening, and so someone could pick up on a distinctive tune or rhythm. He ran a test and it worked. Dick could see the benefits and so authorized Bob to code it into the standard print footer. In production, I could hear the end of every print job as the printer changed its random screeching buzz to the distinctive sounds, and I pulled them off the printer as they finished instead of the finished paper stack speeding up the print job process and reducing the wait time for those waiting on the job. Dick was nominated for an Innovation Award, about a £200 bonus, and accepted without acknowledging Bob. Bob didn't care, and neither did I. After my ear had tuned in, Bob gave me a Morse alphabet and just smiled at me. He had coded symbols for 2 lines at the end of the print that sounded like F*** Dick in Morse code. That's F-U-K-D-I-K. Now, this didn't reduce the noise, but it made it bearable knowing that every print job was an insult. It also made me happy that there were a few radio amateurs in the company who all know Morse, and they all knew Bob, so I guess he told them. When they came to the print pickup point, you could see some of them catch the phrase and smile. Sometimes it's the petty revenges that mean the most. I rejoined the company after I graduated 3 years later. Bob had medically retired after a massive heart attack and died shortly after. Dick had moved on and we were beginning to move to the massive computing power of desktop 386 PCs with local printers instead of the VAX system. But I went down to the print room one day to hear Dick over and over. It made me so happy. I may have shed a little tear at that moment in memory of Bob. Oh, what a man Bob is. Stories like this are just so good because they are so petty. You know, Dick would never have known and probably never knew that this was happening, but people a lot more intelligent than him, like Bob, who clearly was probably a little bit undervalued by people like Dick in this company, just know what's going on and are just secretly telling him to F off. It's brilliant. It really, really is. And now moving on to our final story of petty revenge. Told my entire company my pay rate as I was walking out the door. I wanted to stir up some trouble. I knew I wasn't going to use this particular company as a reference, and I was already hired at the next company and I had my first day all scheduled, and I was angry at the company I was leaving for various reasons. So, on my last day, as I was downloading my pay stubs and insurance information and anything else I might need in future pertaining to my HR with the company, I stumbled on an org chart. Curious, I exported to CSV. Oh, wow, this org chart has everybody's email address. I cleaned up the spreadsheet so it just had email addresses. Saved it, edited it in Notepad so it gives me only email addresses in CSV formats and it's easy to copy and paste. Then I made a burner Gmail address. I know Gmail was accepted inbound by the company because I've worked there forever and received email from Gmail addresses all the time. About a week after I left, a week into my new job, I sent an email to the entire company from my burner Gmail that said, I am a previous employee. I made this much per hour upon my termination in 2020. I never received a performance evaluation in the 4 years I worked at the company. Furious in Florida. The signature was my little homage to Ann Landers. I kept it short and sweet, only said the one thing that no employer wants you to say to a coworker, your pay rates. I worked there until 2021, but I figured maybe if I say 2020, it might be a little less obvious it was me. They fired a lot of people at the start of COVID. I knew I was making a lot of money compared to a lot of people there, but I was still in the middle of the pay range compared to others. The HR rep refused an exit interview, only gave me a PDF survey to sign and slip under his door on the way out. So I forced my exit interview on the whole company. I really hope I stirred up some trouble. Oh wow, what a mess you just left this company in. It really is exceptional because now you'll have every single employee saying, you know what? Yeah, I do deserve some more money, and that's going to be the biggest headache of all time. Well done. Am I the butthole for posting a relative's nudes in the family group chat? Kyle, a 22-year-old man, is a distant relative. Well, he's actually my stepdad's cousin's kid. I've never really been around him much though, just the odd family get-together. We hadn't seen each other for a while, but we did at a wedding a few months ago. He got drunk and kept hitting on me, saying how hot I was and how he'd love to get to know me better. I rolled my eyes and kept trying to get away from him, but he kept following me about throughout the day. Later on, he made someone give him my number and then he kept on messaging me. I complained to my stepdad, who shrugged it off. Some people even thought it was cute or funny, which just encouraged him to act more outrageous. A few days later, he started sexting me and sending nudes. What's worse was people who were at the wedding would tease me like it was some grand joke. About a month or two later, I had finally had enough, and so I sent everyone who had mocked me one of Kyle's nudes. Family making fun of me and Kyle in the group chat? Kyle nude. Aunt who thought we'd make a cute couple? Kyle nude. His parents who had raised him to be a terrible person? Kyle nude plus lewd texts. My stepdad even received a printed picture on his pillow. Amazing how many people I could find via group chats and various social media, and others that I had phone numbers for. I've had a few family members telling me off, telling me how gross it was sending them nudes of Kyle, and how I invaded his privacy, although the younger generation of cousins has taken to posting memes about him, such as when there's a family reunion and you can't decide which of your cousins to bang, or edited versions of his pictures, such as a small leaf covering his bits. Now before we answer the question guys as to whether OP is the butthole in this one or not, they've actually left a couple of updates down below their post. First edit. Tried to block him, but he keeps creating fake accounts and contacting me on different areas of social media. I've already told him off for hitting on me, only to receive a nude of him saying, "Bet if you had a taste, you would like it." I was just fed up with the mocking, the messages from people making fun of me and him hitting me down. It was tiring. I began to dread my phone message sounds, to the point where I turned the phone off and went walking around for the day without it. I know it's extreme to send news to everyone, but it shut them up about how we should go out and how I should give Kyle a chance. And then the next update. Yes, Kyle has stopped sending me nudes. My cousins found out about it and started making fun of him. His stepbrother changed his ringtone to Sweet Home Alabama, and he changed his morning alarm to the sound, "What are you doing, stepbro?" just to annoy him. Kyle did have a rant on my voicemail saying that I'd ruined him and how much of a female dog I was. Well then, a very interesting post to start off today's episode. In my opinion, OP is not the butthole, but honestly, I actually think it's quite close. Guys, before you even hear what I've got to say about this and my reasoning behind it, please do pause the video, go down to the comments and comment your thoughts. Don't get, influenced by me. I want to hear your raw ideas before I say what I've got to say. All right, you done that? Nice, thank you. Anyway, interesting one, really interesting, because I totally get why OP's done it, right? No one's really listening to her. It's a horrible thing getting sent unsolicited nudes, especially from a family member. Like, that is absolutely disgusting. What's even more disgusting, genuinely, is the fact that none of her family are taking this seriously. They're all accepting it and ultimately making a joke out of it. That is horrible. I don't get that at all. So I kind of see why OP has kind of been pushed down this path, and her last resort is to actually just send the nude to people to make them understand how horrible this is and that they really shouldn't be making a joke about a disgusting family situation like this. Look, ideally you wouldn't want to be sending nudes of someone else, obviously, and in some countries, I think in England, that is classified as revenge porn, so probably might be illegal. I don't know if it is where OP is, but you got to be a little bit careful with that. But also, people are making jokes about you because you received an unsolicited nude. Sorry, I wouldn't want that either. I'd want that to stop. I get why you did it. Now moving on to our second post. Am I the butthole for telling another gym member to wear a bra? I, a 25-year-old woman, freaking hate wearing bras. They're uncomfortable, constricting, and expensive. With work from home, I spent the last year and a half basically never wearing a bra, and I got used to it. Quite frankly, my boobs are non-existent anyways. I recently started going to the gym again, and started working out braless. I should note that up until now, no one has ever pointed out anything wrong with me not wearing a bra. However, in the middle of a set of squats, yes, mid-squat, a guy comes up to me, taps me on the shoulder to get my attention, and tells me that my nipples are poking through my shirt. I get really irritated, because why the heck is this guy staring at my nipples in the first place? And then stopping me mid-set to inform me. I get really annoyed, try to finish my sets, but then this effer literally grabs the bar as I ascend and re-racks it for me. He claims it looked like I was having trouble with the last rep and that he'd come over to make sure I could do it, then noticed my nipples. I'm really freaking annoyed at this point, and I told him I didn't need his help finishing my set, and why the F was he looking at my chest in the first place? He said he was going to spot me, but then noticed my chest, and thought it would be inappropriate. What a load of BS. I pointed out that the safety bar was set, so even if I did fail the set, he wasn't needed. But he just insisted that people at gyms look out for each other, and that going forward, I should probably wear a bra so that other people wouldn't get uncomfortable, and that it may help me stay more balanced in my squats. Sorry, well that makes no sense. I'm literally the only girl at the weight section of the gym at the moment, and other guys who are squatting and failed sets never have to worry about this rubbish. I've seen guys fail multiple sets in a row and no one ever rushes to their aid, but I have a very slight pause and everyone thinks I need rescuing? So I'm now really annoyed and also kind of uncomfortable that this guy I've never spoken to in my life thinks he's helping me, and then has the audacity to tell me how to dress. So I tell him, "You have bigger boobs and nipples than I do. Maybe you should wear a bra so people won't get uncomfortable and you won't fail your squats." He then got really defensive, saying he was just trying to help, then called me a female dog. Honestly, I'm not sure if I overreacted, but I'm still kind of annoyed, so maybe that's clouding my judgment. Anyway, Am I the butthole? Now, this one is 100% an obvious no for me, guys. No way is OP being the butthole. That guy is coming over with the most BS excuses I've ever heard. It's pretty obvious that he was just staring at you, right? I mean, it's pretty clear that he is not trying to help you. That is just an obvious lie. I don't really know what his actual intention was here, unless it was literally just to tell you to change what you're wearing. But yeah, not your place, mate. Not your place at all. But OP has actually given us a little update to this story, which adds a little bit more information. Let's get right into it. Update. Am I the butthole for telling another gym member to wear a bra? I finally did start wearing bras again. And not at all because of this incident, but because I've been dealing with depression that made me not really try and get dressed in general, not just at the gym. And dressing for success has been a small way to try and get myself back into a better mental place. Anyways, that guy from the previous post goes to the gym roughly the same time I do, most days. So unfortunately, I did have to see him again. Even though I really wanted to grab his bar out of fake concern while he was squatting, I mostly ignored him. Until 2 days ago. I was deadlifting and recording myself to check my form. The guy comes over and says something like, "You know sumo is cheating, right?" Now, I get this comment a lot, mostly from men half joking, and it's annoying, but I just completely ignore him. He then repeats it a little louder, and I continue to ignore him. I guess he sees that I was recording myself, because then he asks if I have an Instagram. I don't post my lifts on Insta, and if he could follow me. I keep ignoring him. This is what I'm talking about, guys. It's clear that this guy has some ulterior motives. He's not trying to look out for you, or help with your lift. He's just being a little perv, I'm sorry. Finally, he says something like, "See, your form is so much better now that you're wearing a bra." And I frickin' lost it again. I screamed at him that he's a disgusting, harassing POS. Honestly, I don't remember exactly what I said, but it was admittedly very vulgar and it did get a lot of attention. A worker came over and asked if something was wrong, and I said that the guy was sexually harassing me for 2 weeks, and then I asked to speak to a manager. The guy denied it and said he was just trying to help and that I was being sensitive, but either way, the manager asked what was going on and got both our stories. Now, because I'd been recording my lifts, I actually had a video of him where he commented on my bra. So the manager gave him a 30-day ban and told me that if he ever bothered me again, to let her know and she would permanently ban him. So I do feel kind of vindicated, but I also feel a little frustrated that just one man actually saw consequences for this kind of behavior towards women in the gym. It is nice to see someone have repercussions for their actions, but it's also exhausting dealing with this kind of thing constantly at the gym, even if it isn't quite as overt. But I guess I'll have to keep calm and lift on. You see, guys, I freaking knew it. I knew there was something going on here. I knew it was fishy. He wasn't just trying to help you out with your lift. What an absolute BS excuse that was. As soon as you go asking for an Instagram, it's so obvious what your intentions are. This guy's just a creep. Sorry, he can't keep himself to himself in the gym. Creepy bloke. What a mug. As for the manager, thank God that she actually stood up for you. I mean, to be fair, does it help that she was a woman? As you say, this stuff I assume goes on a lot of the time. And if it was a male manager at this gym, is there a chance that the punishment on this weird, creepy bloke might have been less severe? No threat of a permanent ban? I reckon, unfortunately, that might be the case. This sort of thing definitely goes on more than I realize. Girls, women, comment down below. Does this happen at the gym a lot to you or just in life? I'm really sorry if it does. I kind of imagine that it does. And also, guys, goes without saying, don't be like this person. I know none of you would, but don't be like this weird, creepy bloke. Just, if you're gonna go up to a girl, at least be nice to her. Don't do this rubbish, please. All right then, now moving on to the final Am I the Butthole post of this episode. Am I the butthole for dancing half naked in my living room, leading to my boyfriend and his family seeing me? This is so embarrassing, but I can't take it anymore. I have to know if I'm in the wrong here. I need to apologize if so. I, a 21-year-old female, was told by my boyfriend, let's call him Nate, who's 26, that I'd get the house to myself for the weekend. He said he had to go visit his parents to take care of a property-related issue. I was pretty excited to have the house to myself because I've been living with Nate since I was 19 and I miss living alone, though Nate is the love of my life and in no way a trouble to live with. I had this tradition of spending a lot of my weekends baking while in my lingerie. I don't know, it makes me feel pretty. Yes, I know it's stupid, but it just makes me stupid happy, with music and dancing. Super embarrassing to admit, but I also do silly things like pretending I'm a Victoria's model or a singer, and I sing along, loudly. I mention this because this means the house is usually a mess. My dresses are all over and the music is super loud, which is obviously not okay. Now I hadn't done that in a long time because Nate hates loud music and he's not a fan of my cupcakes. So I decided to do it on this weekend. It's a Sunday and I put on What a Feeling by One Direction and it's super loud. I'm only wearing lingerie, the Victoria's kind, so it's lacy as anything, which I regret so much looking back. Ugh. Now my boyfriend used his key to open the door and I didn't hear him come in because, like I said, it's loud in the house and I'm also in the kitchen living room area. Apparently he wanted to surprise me. Nate brought his mum, dad and his sister's 2 kids. They're about 10 years old, I think. They come in and there I am, frozen in a dance pose like an idiot. I quickly ran to our room, yelling, "Sorry, wasn't expecting anyone," putting on clothes when Nate came in. He was so angry. He said I was acting like a child and that I'd embarrassed him. His parents wanted Nate to drop them back as soon as possible, refusing to stay. And his mum called me a lot of names, saying the kids had seen everything and that made me feel really guilty. Now here's where I'm losing sleep over this. On the one hand, I didn't know they would come in. I locked the door too, so I feel like I didn't do anything wrong. I planned on cleaning up my mess before Nate came back as well. Also, Nate and his mum insulted me a lot. But when you look at it from their perspective, I was behaving like an immature person. The house was a mess, I looked a mess, there were baking supplies scattered. Nate just wanted to surprise me and do something nice. Nate is still not completely talking to me, and I don't know how to face his family. I also know his sister told him to make me behave or something, so I feel like I need to apologize before things get worse. But I can't decide for sure if I'm in the wrong here, so I need your help. Now guys, at the top, OP has also said, and this might explain a little bit the quite strong reaction to be fair, Nate's family is also really conservative, and he was brought up like that as well. Someone mentioned I should have added in this, yeah, fair enough. Also, she's from the US, okay. I mean, this one, I don't really know if I can give my opinion, because if I was your boyfriend in this situation, that is the sort of behavior I'd be encouraging. You know, having fun, doing what you love doing, chilling out, relaxing, going crazy, whatever, do what you want to do. It's your life, live it, right? But, you know, I'm not Nate, and, you know, I'm not a really conservative Christian. I just am someone that lets people do what they want to do if they're having fun. But hey, you know, that's me. You like Nate, you love him, he's the love of your life. Maybe you knew he'd react like that. I don't know. It feels pretty weird though, like not speaking to someone just because they were having a good time dancing semi-naked. I mean, not even naked, right? You still got clothes on. Weird one. If that was me in that situation, I'd be applauding you. I'd be saying, yes, keep going. It looks like it's a lot of fun. And I'd probably join in. Not gonna lie. Do you have any spare lingerie lying around for me to whack on? That's a bit too far, but you know what I mean. But listen, you lot, that is not the end of this post because OP has provided us with an update. Alright, so after reading what everyone wrote, I quickly realized that what Nate did was so wrong. A lot of great mums in the comments also helped me understand the fact that even conservative mums, like Nate's, wouldn't react so rudely. It hit me like a wave when I realized what my life had come to. I didn't say anything to Nate about the Reddit post, but he must have figured out that I was upset at him. I was doubting our relationship and pulling away from him. He started talking to me again, and for a day I didn't really say anything, but I knew I had some decisions to make. I genuinely didn't believe I would get so many responses telling me that I was not the butthole, so this was eye-opening for me. Alright, good. Sounds like the Reddit people, the comments down below, are agreeing with me, saying that OP is definitely not the butthole, they're just doing something they enjoy, it's really not that deep. So, a few days after I made the post, I told Nate that we needed to talk. I said that I would be staying with my friend until I felt comfortable around him. Nate didn't know what I was referring to though, which just made me angry because how can he forget a fight that big? and I told him I was upset with how he treated me after the whole "your family walking in on me" incident. I also mentioned how I shouldn't have to wait for him to be away to dance, bake, or listen to One Direction just because he doesn't like it. He tried convincing me to stay, but I left. I think he knew I wouldn't let this go, like the other things, thanks to you guys. Yeah, you're absolutely right, and that's exactly what I'm saying. If you like dancing, baking, wearing lingerie around the house, you do that. It's your life, you gotta do what you want sometimes. What are you talking about? Like, if I'm being completely honest, Nate, I'd be sacking him off. Yeah, sure, you love him, but if he doesn't let you do the things that you love, which by the way, are so mundane and everyone does them anyway, sack him off. Get a boyfriend who joins in with you. AKA me. Alright, maybe not me, but someone else who lives in America. Yeah, anyway, let's carry on. Yesterday, I asked Nate to meet me at a cafe so we could have a conversation about everything that happened. Nate cried, like for the first time ever since I've known him. He apologized and told me he messed up and that he would change because he realized his mistakes now. I told him I wanted to move out, and maybe after a while, if he does actually change, I'd give us another chance. I just needed some space to think about things, and so I told him we should take a break from each other for a while. Nate told me he would talk to his mum as well, and that he should have defended me, to which I said, yeah, you should have. I actually borrowed direct sentences to explain why he was in the wrong from some comments that were left on the Reddit posts because they were so helpful. It went better than how I imagined it would go. How good is Reddit, by the way? Seriously? I mean, look at this. We're improving people's lives here, people. This is exceptional. Also, thank you. Thank you doesn't even begin to cover what I really want to say to everyone who helped me, and also to the mods who removed a lot of creepy comments. Oh my god. Thanks for sharing your stories about dancing in your underwear as well. It made me feel better to know I wasn't some freak for enjoying those things. I'm going to use some baking tips as well that people left and make cupcakes right now, actually because I can. I feel so relieved. And that's the whole point right there. Look, if you want to go crazy, dance around your house, singing, screaming, whatever, go for it. It's fun. When I was at uni in my second and third years, I was fortunate enough to live with some of my very best mates, 4 of my friends. And us 5, we would do some crazy stuff. I mean, I say crazy, similar to UOP. You know, we'd dance, sing loudly, probably annoy the neighbours. And thank God that we didn't live with Nate because he'd been kicked out of the house. That's what would have happened to him. The boring old insert word there. Get a life, Nate, you boring loser. That's what I'd say to you and your mother. I do understand it though. From Nate's perspective, like, he's got his very conservative Christian family just behind him. He's probably like embarrassed for them, but as long as he's not embarrassed for himself and he's just embarrassed for them and can, you know, understand that his reaction was really bad and that he should have defended you, or at least not just like randomly stopped talking to you, that's very strange. And if he is genuinely, you know, sad and apologizes for what he's done and understands how bad it was, then fair play to him. At least he's apologized in the first place. Like, I rate that. He knows he's in the wrong now. Good stuff. See how it goes. Don't write it off. As you said, OP, he is the love of your life, but he doesn't like to dance to One Direction. So how much of a good boy is he really? That's my question. Drunk mother showed up to berate me in the middle of the night and vomited all over herself. This happened not long after I turned 15, and my mum had tried to send me to military school behind my father's back. Well, that's a wonderful start, isn't it? We didn't know yet, but during this time, my mother was having an affair with an old high school ex-boyfriend of hers that she'd somehow reconnected with. She'd claimed that she was going out to drink with friends, but she really didn't have friends, save for a few co-workers she occasionally went out with. But they didn't really like her all that much. My dad and I figured maybe she'd finally made some real friends because she actually got a bit nicer and was leaving me alone more. Whenever mum went out drinking with co-workers, she always took a cab to head out and then came back in one later so she wouldn't drink and drive. The cab service even knew her by name since she called every week. None of her co-workers really tolerated her enough to be her designated driver, so no one really got suspicious when she was using this routine more frequently to go meet her lover. One night, however, my mum came home extremely drunk and hobbled her way up to my room. I awoke to her pounding on my locked door at about 4 a.m. She was punching and kicking it from the way it sounded. I opened the door to see her standing there looking disheveled, swaying back and forth and slurring her words. She called me a bad child for not doing as she says anymore, and that she wished she'd only had girls. I was understandably freaked out and told her to go away.
It was about that time my dad showed up and this happened. The following is again paraphrased, as this happened a long time ago. "What the heck is going on here in the middle of the goddamn night?" my dad said. My mum replied, very drunk, I was telling this little idiot exactly what I think of him for disrespecting me. He's totally out of control." "How much have you had to drink tonight?" "Oh, that's none of your freaking business. You. It looks like she's thinking really hard for a second. "Limp snake piece of fermented waste. I should have married the other guy. He's so much better than you. He treats me like a real woman." "What other guy?" Mum just then looked like she was gonna hurl and turned to go down the hall and headed towards the upstairs bathroom. But she only managed to hobble about halfway before projectiles spewing her guts out all over the upstairs hallway. Then she fell over face first onto her own vomit and passed out. Dad was visibly disgusted. He then asked me to help him get her to the bathroom so he could clean her up. But as we went to lift her, we noticed a smell quickly forming around us. My mother had actually soiled herself while laying in her own vomit. The smell of alcohol, vomit, pee, and wet poop mixed together was horrendous. But we still had to carry her to the bathroom. Oh my god, guys, I've got such a horrible image in my mind right now. My dad had me get a whole roll of paper towels and a garbage bag. Then spent the next 45 minutes cleaning my mother up in the bathtub. He threw her clothes into the washing machine and then put her to bed. She woke up with a bad hangover the next morning, all the while not remembering anything she did or said, and she was more embarrassed than I'd ever seen her when she found out what happened. It wasn't me or my dad who told her. Nope, it was my sister. We were going to try and spare her the finer details on what happened, but my sister blabbed the whole thing in front of her while she was nursing a coffee at the kitchen table. My dad took some time off work to call in a carpet service that same day. He had the hallway carpet ripped up, then had the floor steam cleaned before new carpet was put down. My mother hid in her room the entire time because she didn't want to be seen, and she stayed clear of me for a while. But she then soon fell back into her usual habits. My dad got suspicious after my mum mentioned the other guy, and got the call logs from the phone company for both the house phone and my mum's cell phone. And what he found was enough for him to call a private investigator. My mum was outed as a cheater soon after because she really didn't cover her tracks well. And that's when my dad finally said he wanted a divorce. I wasn't there to see the arguments when he called her out, but I was told it was next level. She went crazy and threw stuff all over the kitchen, broken dishes everywhere. Yeah, guess who got to clean that up? Also, if anyone is wondering what happened to the guy my mum was having an affair with, my dad told me he actually applied for a transfer at his job and skipped town pretty fast. I've got no idea where he went or where he is now, and from what I've heard, he didn't ever contact my mum again. So yeah, she threw away her marriage for a short fling that meant nothing. Not that I care, I'm one of the few people who are actually happy their parents are divorced. I mean, look, you guys probably know I've had some pretty drunk nights myself, but not to this extent. I don't think I've ever been in a state like this. Vomiting, sure, happens to the best of us, but also soiling yourself at the same time and having to be dragged upstairs into the bathroom and then put to bed by your husband. That is elite, sorry. I mean, what a night she must have had. As for your mother, OP, yeah. Strange decision from her to do what she did. I don't really get the benefit unless she was just super bored with her life and was like, you know what, let's just F everything up and see what happens. Maybe that's what she was going for, but yeah, clearly there were no long-term benefits and a lot of long-term disadvantages, like losing your entire family, for one. And now moving on to our second story of today's episode. Entitled Uncle complains about Halloween makeup. Dad kicks him out. For some backstory. At the time of this story, I, a 19-year-old woman, lived in a house with my 5 siblings, my parents, grandparents, uncle, and his twin sons. My siblings and I shared a room, my parents had a room, and my grandparents had the back room. My uncle and his kids lived in the backyard in a tent. What is going on in that house? Well, here we go. The reason they lived in the backyard is because my uncle used to treat my parents like it was his house and would criticize how we would clean. When my parents told him that it was in fact their house and not his, He bought a tent and refused to come back in. Oh my God. Right, so this is the sort of person that we're dealing with here. Goodness me, here we go. Now, my siblings and I do not get along with our uncle because he'd always disrespected us and called us names. His kids were no better. They'd constantly be telling us that we need to stop doing boy things. My siblings and I would also have to keep all of our valuables close because our cousins were known thieves. At this time, I'd been experimenting with special effects makeup and liquid latex. This story takes place 3 days before Halloween and on Halloween itself. Story time. I had just started working on a makeup look in my bedroom when my first cousin walked in on his phone, looking around. I ignored him and hoped he'd walk away and just leave me alone without any confrontation. Of course, that was too much to ask. After hanging up the phone, he walked up to me and just stared. OP, no boy will ever want you if you keep wearing makeup and dressing like a insert rude word here. I just nodded without looking up from my mirror. I knew he hated when he couldn't get a rise out of me, but I didn't want to give him that satisfaction. OP, I'm talking to you. I'll tell your dad that you're being rude to me and you'll get in trouble. See, I knew he was lying. He wasn't supposed to be in my room when nobody was home. If my dad knew that he was in the room, the boys and my uncle would be locked out of the house. He then started to slap my mirror while I was doing my contour. At this point, I was getting really angry and irritated. I decided to finally answer him. What do you want? Quit ignoring me. No man wants a girl so obsessed with her makeup, you need to get rid of it. He walked up to my desk and started grabbing my stuff. I didn't use most of it anyway because there were colours I didn't like to use, but then he grabbed all of my eyeliners and I was forced to get up and grab the makeup out of his hands, putting it back where it belonged. No, I don't think so. Leave my stuff alone. Get out of my room. I wear makeup because I like it. You're freaking ugly with or without it anyways. No one will ever like you, again, insert rude word. You don't even have talent. Your makeup looks trash, he hissed out with a smile. With that, I felt my ears get hot and I pushed him out of the room. If I had a door, I would have slammed it. Wait, sorry, you don't have a door on your bedroom? Oh my God, what is this house? I'll admit, I may have pushed him a little bit rougher than I meant to, but I was angry. I always got comments about my makeup because I do have a more alternative style and I like bold colours. I told my sisters about everything that had happened and they just told me that he was a jerk and that they all loved my makeup. They all also had asked me if I was still willing to do their makeup for their Halloween costumes, and of course I said yes. Halloween arrived and I began doing the girls' makeup while my cousins sat and watched. Two of them asked for lots of liquid latex and fake blood, seeing as they were dressing up as zombies. Of course they'd want to be something that a boy should be. I bet that's why you cut your hair. Are you one of those nasty slur for trans people? Commented my second cousin this time, making my first cousin laugh out loud and my sisters look sad. I saw my sisters start to pick at the liquid latex, trying to get it off. Hey, girls, don't forget that you're going to be the scariest looking zombies ever, and you all better act like it. Tell you what, you can take 2 of my black shirts and tear them up for your costume. Sound good? When I mentioned my black shirts, they got really happy and ran to my closet. I turned my head immediately towards my cousins, and I just snapped. You guys have no business talking to my sisters like that. Do it again, and I'm going to kick you both in the balls. Before they could say anything, my sisters ran back in with some shirts and scissors. While they were tearing up the shirts, I started on my younger sibling, who asked me to make her a rainbow skeleton. The cousins were silent while I did her face. Hopefully, they'd be silent throughout the rest of the faces. My last sibling asked me to do a Guy Fawkes mask. She had always loved V for Vendetta, so we decided to watch the movie while I did her face. I keep looking at my cousins and only catch their evil eyes. As I was finishing the last one, my first cousin comes up to the seat and sits down on the chair I use for the girls. I looked at him just sitting in the chair and I started packing my stuff up. He looked confused and tried to grab my arm. "What are you doing? Make me look like Darth Maul." He sounded angry. "Why should I do your face? You didn't even ask me to do your face. I continued packing and I was just walking away. "Well, just do it. You have all that stuff out." He sounded like a little kid that couldn't have another cookie. My cousins both came up to me and they began to berate me about how I'm such a female dog and should just do it anyways because I'd be getting experience. Sorry, are your cousins now choosing beggars as well? We shouldn't even have to ask you. Just do it. Yeah, quit being such a female dog. We're telling our dad. They finally just walked away and I went into the bathroom to make myself look like Ursula from The Little Mermaid. I took about an hour to finish, and when I came out, they were standing in the living room watching TV with my uncle. My uncle then came up to me and started yelling about how I've always been so ungrateful and that I don't deserve anything. "My sons are so upset that you won't do their faces, and you've ruined Halloween for them. You're lucky you're not my kid, or else I would be beating your butt black and blue." My uncle was still shouting at me when my parents came into the house. My dad immediately intervened. "What the heck is going on here? Uncle, why are you yelling at my daughter like that? OP, are you okay?" I didn't even realize I was crying until my dad asked me that. "That little dog won't do their faces. She said she would. If she was my daughter, But my uncle got cut off by my dad's angry yelling voice. "She isn't your daughter. You have no right to be yelling at her like that. I've been lenient towards you because you are my brother-in-law, but this is it. Pack your stuff and leave. You have until tomorrow morning to be out of here." Dad didn't even bother listening to my uncle's protests and started walking off. I looked at my cousins through my tears and was happy to see that they were upset. I should mention that the paint is what really made me tear up. It's water activated. So when I started crying and wiping my eyes, it got in my eyes and made the rest of my makeup run. My dad told me to fix my makeup and to go outside to trick or treat when I was done. I did as I was told, and I had a blast. When we got home, my uncle and his kids were already gone. They spent months at my uncle's baby mama's house. Then she kicked them out because she found out he cheated on her. Last I heard from them, the boys were taken into CPS and my uncle put in jail because of him not having a house, job, or a way to support them. I don't know the details, but if I did, I'd let you guys know. And finally, OP has actually posted a picture of her with the Ursula makeup, and I've got to say, it looks really good. Why is someone abusing you for that? It makes no sense. It's brilliant. Congratulations, OP, you're clearly very talented. Your uncle and his kids are not.
My hag of a stepmom gave away my PlayStation 4 while I was away in college. So I rent out her house while she was on her honeymoon with her newest husband. I am an only son. My mum died of ovarian cancer at only 55 5 years ago. It broke my dad's heart. They'd been together since college and were the same age, with my dad being a month older. I'm 22 years old and I'm about to graduate college with my degree in chemistry when the main events start to occur. I went to college on a full ride scholarship. This is important for later. My dad met my new stepmom when she was my mum's nurse at the hospital where she spent her final days. My stepmom, Grace, played all the right notes to gain my dad's trust. She was empathetic to him, nurturing, comforting after my mum passed. I was 17 and old enough to sense that she was just trying to weasel her way into getting my dad's resources. But it was up to my dad if he wanted to be in a relationship with her. I was in my final year of public school, and I just won a scholarship to attend college out of the country the following year. My dad mourned my mum for a year, and that whole time Grace would check in on him by phone every month or so, in my opinion, to scope out the possibility of sinking her hooks in him. After a year passed, Grace took the gloves off and went hard after my dad. Grace was only 40 when she and my dad started seeing each other. I didn't like her, but at the same time, my dad at least didn't seem so depressed anymore. So I tried to be less pessimistic about her and give her the benefit of the doubt. In my gut, I didn't trust her though. But we're Scandinavian, and at least in my family, the son doesn't tell his father what to do, or even offer any opinion. Grace is from the Czech Republic if you're wondering. My father was a very successful banker during his career, and amassed quite a portfolio of wealth. I'll spare you the details, but after 6 months of dating, Grace and my father got married. My dad never really got over my mum though. and he was getting weaker and weaker, even though he was only 57. Since his health was fading, he called me to him and asked me point blank, "Boy, what do you need to set you up in this life?" I told him I don't need anything. I'm a man and I can take care of myself. But what are you even talking about, Dad? You're going to be around for decades yet. I did remind him that he had living sisters with children, my aunts and cousins. I also reminded him that I had a full scholarship to college, so don't worry about giving me any cash. Unfortunately though, he was dead only a year later at 59. I of course have seen lots of Hollywood movies, so I considered the conspiracy theory that maybe my dad's nurse wife poisoned him and made him sign over all his money to her, but I really honestly don't think that's what happened. Other relatives didn't like Grace either, but they knew my dad was totally in love with my mum and that her death utterly broke him. Well, long story short, my dad bequeathed his 5-bedroom house to me even though I wasn't expecting it and didn't ask for it. He also gave a small endowment to each of his sisters and their children. He left about 80% of all his existing money to Grace, which amounted to several hundreds of thousands of dollars. My dad ignored me because he's generous to a fault and still gave me several tens of thousands of dollars, which were of course very useful to me. Grace tried to put on a friendly front, but I could tell that she was angry as heck that she didn't get my dad's house too. That belonged to me and I had the legal papers to prove it. She was especially mad because we live in an extremely upscale and trendy location, and houses are hard to come by and easily sold for a massive profit. During the first few months after my dad's death, I had the nauseating, creepy experience of knowing that Grace was trying to feel me out to see if I might be into a little relationship with her. Gross. She still stayed at the house though, because over the last 3 years, she'd gotten used to living there and acting like she owned it. And even though I officially owned it, I was always away at college and only visited my dad's old house once every couple of months. And even then, it wasn't to see Grace, but to see my cousins who lived just a few miles away. I downplayed the fact that it was really my house, and over the months, I think Grace gradually forgot that she really had no legal right to the house at all. She probably believed that sooner or later, because I never asked her for any of the hundreds of thousands of my dad's dollars that she now had, that I was somehow independently wealthy and would just give up my house to her. I knew that I would eventually hydrogen bomb this female dog when she started dating some new guy only 5 months after my dad was in the ground. And one time when I came home from college after graduating, she and her new boyfriend, some sleazy looking D-bag named Ivan, who was only a few years older than me, were acting like I was a guest in my own house and that they owned it. Well, you know what? I played along. Grace told me she gave away my PlayStation 4 to Ivan's cousin because I'm too old to play with video games. That was when I changed. I don't even know this mother effer, and you give him my PS4 to give away to some other idiot who I also don't know? I quickly changed all my network passwords that same day. I smiled, but I knew what I had to do eventually. She also said that her and Ivan were getting married because she can't just mourn your father forever. I have to move on with my life. I then tell her that I just graduated college and I've already secured employment with a little local firm and that I'll soon find a new place to live. She looks thrilled, especially the part where it looks like I'll soon have a new place to live. Then, in a patronizing way, she tells me, "You always have a place in our house though. You're welcome to stay whenever you please." Yeah, thanks Grace. Really generous of you. What I really say is that I will probably have a new place in 3 months. She says that's wonderful because she intends to go to her homeland to have a wedding with Ivan and afterwards have her honeymoon. She assures me it's a local affair. "Otherwise, I'd invite you, honey. And anyway, I know you're so busy." I congratulate her. She then asks me if I can watch the house for her. Watch my own house? Yeah, sure. But what I really say is, of course I'll take care of the house. I am careful to not say your house though. She and her D-bag fiance, who I am 100% sure is only there for Grace's money, ironically, go on their trip. And I immediately put out advertisements in rental websites offering to lease my house. I hire movers and have all of Grace's furniture and possessions boxed up and put into a storage rental facility. I retain all of my parents' furniture that they had before my dad met Grace. Locks changed. All of them. Within days, I am inundated with dozens of inquiries regarding my amazing furnished house with fantastic views. I rent it to a wonderful young family, a barrister and his schoolteacher wife and their 2 preteen children. They pay me their first and last month's rents and sign a lease for a year. I warn them about my crazy stepmom who thinks this is her house, but I present them with contact information to my lawyer, the same lawyer my dad retained, in case they need any assurance that I'm on the level. I also give my lawyer the information about the storage facility, including the fact that I generously paid 4 months of storage in advance, which is a whole month longer than Grace's Czech honeymoon adventure. I then found a great apartment in the city near my new place of work. There, I met a woman in a restaurant I frequent at night after a long workday. We've been dating 6 months now and are engaged to be married. Grace, of course, tried to shriek and cause trouble when she realized she got kicked out of my house, but my lawyer quickly shut her mouth without me ever having to speak to her garbage face again. From what I hear, her and her trash husband left the country, and I assume they're blowing through my dad's money and will soon be broke like chavs usually become when they taste a little bit of what they think is the good life. So maybe Grace will go and try and exploit some other lonely man into giving her his money. Speaking of money, the house that I rent out is generating so much that I'm not only able to help pay for my cousin's college, but I moved into a larger apartment of my own, together with my fiance. I love my job, but really, I could survive solely on renting my dad's old house. And to think, if Grace had only been cooler and nicer, I might have let her stay at the house, just to be a good sport. And definitely if she stayed the heck out of my room. But no, she had to act all proprietary, so I had to make her homeless as a wedding gift. Oh, and just a little postscript, I bought another PS4. Even though I didn't even use my old one that much. It didn't matter. It wasn't for Grace to give away. You don't give away other people's things. You give away your own things. Which is why I chose to kick Grace out of my house. Because it's mine. And I decide who stays here. And there you go, guys. That is why you never steal someone else's PlayStation, because it could end up costing you your home. I mean, to be fair, obviously, this woman seems like an absolute cow anyways, just leeching on a man that is mourning the death of his wife. Look, maybe we don't know enough context there. Maybe that's just the way it came across. Maybe she was nice. Who knows? Certainly doesn't sound it. And one thing that I absolutely love is that Ivan the Great is doing the exact same thing to her that she did to your father. It's beautiful. You can see it coming from a mile away. She's got mug written on her forehead, the crazy cow. I mean, you could even call her an absolute disgrace. But that wouldn't be a good joke, so don't call her that. Anyway, let's move on to our second story. All right, then, now moving on to our second story. Now, to be honest with you guys, this has probably happened to quite a few of you listening, watching right now. But anyway, apologies if it might hit close to home. We've all been there. Sticking a girl who's been using me with a fat bill. I've really liked this girl for a while that I met at a lifeguard certification course. And I talked to her while I was there, and we, I thought at least, ended up hitting it off. We exchanged numbers and social media and all that, and we messaged for a few weeks before I asked her out to a movie, which she accepted. We'd been going on casual dates, nothing too serious, and we weren't hanging out at my place or her place, even though I'd hinted at the idea, for a few weeks, before one of her friends, someone that was also at the lifeguarding course that I met and kept in contact with because he was cool, sends me this screenshot. Alright then, so let's have a look at this screenshot. As you can see, text messages, "Aren't you an OP going out now?" And then the girl replies, "Not really, but as long as he keeps paying for everything, I'll let him take me out more. Girls gotta eat." Oh, why you gotta do him like that? She's just, yeah, hands up in the air, getting free food, I guess, not really interested in the guy. Sucks to see, man, sucks to see. Anyway, her friend said he felt bad for me because I was nice and that she does this often to other dudes. After seeing this, I asked her to go on a nice date with me to a hibachi grill restaurant, $20 to $40 plates, and premium desserts are served here. I got the most expensive thing they had, and so did she. We both got fancy ice cream and multiple refills on drinks. I complimented her a lot and smiled consistently before getting up to go to the bathroom and leaving. I was also her ride. About 45 minutes after, I get furious text from her saying that she had to have her mum come down and pay for it because she didn't have the money on her and that we were done. Look, I know it's not a lot and it sucks because I thought she was actually into me, but it felt pretty nice leaving her that way. Now look, I know that some of you watching right now probably think that was a little bit over the top, a little bit too harsh, bit immature, but in my opinion, it was nothing short of exceptional. That's karma right there. Look, if you're gonna accept meals off someone who's paying for them, that's one thing, and that's okay, but only if you're actually interested in the person and dating them and, you know, having some sort of future with them at least. You can't just accept free meals while you're kind of just, you know, towing them along, not really interested in them at all, just getting the free food. Nah, come on, that's so disrespectful. Yo, comment down below, guys. Have you ever been in OP's situation, you know, where maybe you go for a few dates with a girl and you're paying for the meals, and then after a while she's just like, yeah, by the way, I never fancied you. Well, no, yeah, me neither. Anyway, let's carry on. You know, it's actually quite weird. Some of the comments below the story are saying, oh, you should never have done that. Maybe she was just making her mind up. But no, she clearly had already made her mind up, as shown by those texts, right? And I think it's just bad, leading you on, causing you to spend so much money for no reason eventually. Like, she knows that you like her, otherwise you wouldn't be doing this. So it's pretty obvious she's just using you. Sorry, dude. Happens to the best of us. All right, then, now moving on to our final story of today's episode. How I ended up with my boss's job. I was working for an advertising agency, a pretty big one, and I had an unethical manager. Well, when I started out and met him, I realized that he was going to be one of the most unethical managers that I've ever dealt with. He'd order his sales reps to do things that would increase his bonuses, which are based on margins. For example, say a client decided to buy product XYZ and their spend was $2,000 a month. He'd want the agent to put up products ABC and keep the spend at $2,000, even though the client didn't agree to that. The fact is, the clients generally wouldn't notice, but if they did, it could cost you your job. I was the guy that refused his demands. He'd tell me to cheat the clients and I would refuse. He'd get mad, I wouldn't care. This went on for quite a while. Now, there is something that I don't tell people very often. I live in a one-party consent state, which means so long as I'm aware a conversation is being recorded, I can record it without informing the other party. Now, I had just upsold my largest client, making him even larger, but I didn't sell the products my boss wanted me to sell. He demanded I switch things around. I refused. I told him I sold the client XYZ. That's what we agreed to. I'm not going to change that without the customer's permission. His exact words were, "If the customer, this is your largest client. I need him on ABC or I'm not going to make my number." I'm sorry, but you and I both know ABC isn't right for this client, and that's why he didn't buy it. You're fired. If you can't follow instructions, you're fired. After confirming he was dead serious, I said, "If you do that, I'll have your job by the end of the month." I went home, and I didn't think he'd go through with it. But sure as heck, next morning, I'm locked out of all our systems. I call tech support and get told that I've been fired. So who do I call? Well, I call our regional vice president and tell him I have several recordings I think he should listen to. Remember, my boss ordering me to do unethical things wasn't uncommon. So I meet up with my RVP and play 6 different recordings that I'd saved, showing my manager was pushing his agents to break the law. To which my RVP leaned back in his chair and let out a sigh, knowing he had to fire my manager. Having a sales manager that is forcing his reps to break the law is just bad business. At which point I asked for my job back. He agreed that I would get my job back and asked me to take the week off and call him on Monday. He told me he'd talk to payroll and make sure I got paid for this week as well. FYI, he fulfilled all of his promises with me, although I missed the payday but got back pay later, so I was fine with that. That Monday, I come into our Monday morning meeting in which my RVP was there, and he informed the entire team that my boss had been fired, and why. He also mentioned that if anyone wanted to apply for his job, there was now an opening. So I, of course, applied, and after 3 rounds of interviews, I got my promotion. Sure as heck, I was right. I did have my boss's job by the end of the month. It was glorious the first day, walking into his office and sitting in his nice, big, comfy chair. Honestly, I don't know OP's gender, and it's 2021, so I'm not about to assume and get myself cancelled, but the balls on OP, oh my god, it's just insane. To say when you're being fired, if you fire me, I'll have your job by the end of the month, and then to go through with it, it's sensational behaviour of the highest accordion. And also, did you know, according to recent studies, most people won't realise that there was an instrument at the beginning of that sentence. Another unbelievable stat. It's incredible. OP, you're a legend. I'm kind of waffling now. Probably best to end the video. But I might just keep going. Who really cares? I'm just, flummoxed by the balls of OP. You could just hold them in your hands. Imagine saying that to your boss. Yeah, look, I get it. Obviously, OP has dirt on him and can get him fired, and they probably know that, but also, that's not set in stone, right? Yeah, you have the recordings, but who knows? The VP might not listen to you. They might just say, no, you're fired, don't want any contact anymore. It's incredible. And then, to apply for the job, and get it. It's elite. It is elite, guys. I'm sorry. She only wants to pay me $20 a day for caring for 14 animals. Before I begin, I'm going to acknowledge that this entire mess is partly my fault. I agreed to watch my mum's co-workers' animals for 5 days, and I didn't set a price. I made the mistake of expecting her to name a fair price for my work. A big, big, big mistake. As I said, I got a call from my mum's co-worker saying that she was going out of town and needed someone to care for her 14 animals. She explained the different animals: 9 ducks that live in her bathrooms, 3 dogs and 2 cats. She explained what would need to be done: food and water, as well as cleaning the ducks. Now, I'd never cared for ducks or even seen one outside of the park, so when she understated the amount of care that would go into all these animals, I believed her. I got there the night before her trip, and she showed me what needed to be done. It turns out the dogs were barely house trained, and one of them was a semi-aggressive pit bull. They needed to be fed twice a day with homemade, warmed up food. The 9 ducks did not have enough room to exercise, and the way they were set up made cleaning hazardous and difficult. I was told I had to let them roam around the house, as they weren't allowed outside, and clean up the mess. They also required a homemade fruit salad daily, and to refill their water dishes several times a day, as they often tipped them over. Each cleaning and feeding needed to be performed twice daily. The cats, to be fair, were honestly pretty easy. Food and water twice a day, pretty average and expected cat care, no issues with them. Isn't that just typical cats? At this point, I felt very deceived on the whole, as she had not fully explained how much work was required. There were also a lot of little extra details, like medicating several of the animals, etc. But unfortunately, I felt responsible for my commitments and accepted the job anyways. Now, the stay was awful. The pit bull was terrifying, and several times the barking and lunging sent me into a full-on panic attack. This was made much worse by the fact that I had no prior warning about his habits. I walked in one day to find that the ducks were indeed capable of escaping the shower, and that the pit bull had torn one of them apart. In the house, it was carnage. After making the owner aware of the situation, I was told that the pit bull had to sleep inside of the laundry room for the remainder of the stay. Each night, he spread feces and urine all around that I had to clean up. Along with a difficult stay, her house was about 30 minutes out of town, with no Wi-Fi or cell phone service. I was also in charge of picking her up and dropping her off at the airport. When she got home, she handed me a bundle of cash, and I made another mistake of not counting it out until I got home. The woman is very wealthy, and I assumed that she was going to pay a fair price, since she could afford it. It turns out she'd only paid me $100. I did the math and found out that was only $3.30 an hour, and that's being generous, as I probably spent more time than that. This morning, I made her aware of the situation and told her that the pay hadn't even covered fuel. She responded that she didn't pay by the hour, and instead by the day. Now, I'm not really sure why she thought that that was a good defense, honestly. I'm currently in the process of trying to get more cash. I asked for $60 a day instead. Fortunately, she still thinks that I'll be coming back for her 2 other trips later next month, and she also works with my mother. I won't be coming back, but I'm prepared to let her think that. I'm currently in between work, and without that money, I won't be able to eat. So it's a survival situation. I'm not sorry. The fact that she thinks that paying solely fuel costs for 14 animals when a single dog costs an average of $50 a night to board is unbelievably entitled. I'm aware that I didn't set a price and I made a lot of mistakes in not counting the money, but I didn't get her back from the airport until 1 a.m. in my defense. And I'm still very upset that I've basically done all this work for free. But don't you worry guys, that's not the end of the story. OP has given us a nice little update. I have not left her alone for the entire week, and I've sent her reminder texts about the rest of her payments every other day. Finally, I was blunt and gave her the options of how she could pay me. This was the response. Assurance to me that she is indeed entitled. After much research and you not being here 24/7 and the loss of one of my ducks because you were not here as I expected, I find that I have paid you fairly and no additional funds will be coming forth. This is final, she said. From here, I went in on her. A week of pent-up anger and not having enough money for food came out, and I no longer gave a frick about how put together I looked. My final angry message was a little less angry and more useful, so I'll share it here as well. So, lady, to summarize. 1. You didn't give me proper warning about anything until the night before. Nipping is not biting. I have photo evidence of bruises on my body. 2. I warned you that I was not planning on being there 24/7. 3. The duck dying is not my fault. And you admitted it yourself. I had no information to expect this. And 4, my prices are final. Now you don't have to hire me in the future, but this is the price for the service you already got. So, for these reasons, when would you like to make the rest of your payments? I doubt I'll be receiving a response to this, or payment, but for my own poops and giggles, I thought maybe I could at least try and make her feel bad. I will be contacting animal control after this though, so don't worry. That's an affair that I'll be handling privately, however. And finally, I will update if I get any more responses. I, for one, want an update then. Guys, honestly, $20 a day for 14 animals. Are you joking? That is mental. Well, I say 14. I guess it's kind of 13 now. Rest in peace, little ducky. But hey, an aggressive pit bull mixed with 9 ducks. Sounds like a brilliant combination. This woman is obviously very stupid for even having those animals living together and not separating them well enough. I don't know how more ducks haven't been mauled by this pit bull in the past. Seems like something that would happen very regularly, if I'm completely honest. But then also refusing to pay more than $100 for 5 days of work with 14 animals. Yes, what? Are you joking? That's not enough to even, as OP said, get to the house and back for 5 days in a row, driving. Mental. I mean, to be fair, to have 14 pets like that, I think you have to be slightly strange, don't you? Sorry if you're a pet lover and you have 14 pets yourself, but 14, are you mad? That is crazy. Sounds like they absolutely dominate the gaff as well, which is another thing. Not a house that I'd like to go in. Imagine the smell. Anyway, you need your money, OP. I hope you get it. Now moving on to our second story. Entitled man at a hockey game tried to kick me out of my season ticket holder seats. So, this happened several years ago, probably around 2012 or so. A little bit of background to start with. My dad was a die-hard fan of our local NHL team and had season tickets for longer than I was alive, which was 23 years at that point. After having them for that long, he'd managed to secure some pretty awesome seats. Section 219, which is on the second tier of the stadium, but the front row seats, which have an arguably unbeatable view of the game. Growing up, I went to tons of games with him, but by this point he was getting old and it was tougher for him to make it to the games himself. So he was nice enough to let my boyfriend, now ex, and I use his tickets and go to the game together. This time was not the first time that we had done that. So we made it to the game and had been sitting and watching for a good amount of time. Then, I want to say early second period, a seemingly nice man came up into our section and walked up to my ex and I. We would be the easiest to talk to, as we are the closest to the entrance, being in the first row. So it seemed logical that someone would just be asking a random question to the most convenient people that he found. He was followed by 3 other people, and for context, there happened to be 2 empty seats next to us. Here is how the conversation went. Hi there, is this section 219? Yes, you're in the right place, I replied. It takes me a few seconds to then comprehend the look quickly spreading on this seemingly nice man's face. A disgusting looking self-righteous smile that sneered,
Yes, poor young person. I'm perfectly aware of where I am. He then puts out his hand, palm up, and gestures with his fingers, as if saying, come here to a child. I realize at this point that this man is in fact not a nice man, but instead an entitled man. He then says, in a seriously, comically annoying voice out of nowhere, and also while shaking his head, gotta go, your time's up enjoying our seats. Back to where you came from. He then points his other thumb, the one not continuously gesturing as described above, up to the top of the stadium, then looks back and laughs at his family. This was not done quietly, by the way. I am a super friendly and non-confrontational person, so I was dumbstruck. I don't think I could find any words. I just probably sat there with my mouth hanging slightly open, not at all sure what to do next. My ex didn't say anything either. He wasn't super familiar with the place, and he might have wondered if we were in the wrong place, since this guy seemed so sure that these couldn't possibly be our seats. Thankfully, we didn't need much time to compose ourselves. One of the men in the group sitting directly behind us piped up. Mind you, this group are also season ticket holders, so they likely recognize me. Hey, let me see your tickets, mate. Now, the entitled man, who was not super thrilled that we weren't immediately doing his bidding, pulled out his tickets and showed it to this other nice man. Wow, you're in row 19, not row 1, sir. I think it's time that you go back to where you came from. The nice man then does the same palm up hand gesture the entitled man introduced us to, and yells, gotta go. A small but powerful crowd around us started chanting, gotta go as well, until the now red-faced entitled man sheepishly puts his hand up saying, okay, and leads his family through the crowd up the stairs to row 19. I have never felt so supported by strangers in my entire life. Unfortunately, I also had to meet one of the most entitled men first for that to happen. Thanks for letting me share my story. What a story it was. Now that is legendary. That is camaraderie that you only get at sports events with your home fans backing you up, all your season ticket holders together. It's beautiful. The sort of scenes that I'd love to see down at Stamford Bridge. If you know. Incredible. Like, come on. The cheek of this guy. It's not one of those where he's misread his ticket and gone, oh, I actually genuinely thought I was in row 1. No, it says row 19. That's not close. You're just doing it for chat. You've seen 2 empty seats. You were like, can I kind of, force my way in here? He's gone for it. Absolutely arrogantly, and he's been kicked out, embarrassed, made to look like the absolute mug that he is. It's brilliant. All the people around you just cheering at him to get out. Incredible scenes. Love it. And now moving on to our final post of today's episode. Cult stalkers think they can scare me out of my new home. Now this one is an update to a story that I read a few days ago on my channel. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, you kind of need to watch it for this to make sense. So click the I button right now, that's the video, or go down into the pinned comment and the description, it's linked there. But you need to go to 13 minutes into the video to see the story. It's the last story of that episode of that video. Hope that makes sense. If you've not seen part 1, go watch it. Anyway, this is part 2. So, since my last post, I've taken the advice that some of you gave me. I told my boss, my landlord, and let my neighbors know about the fact that Scientology have sent people to follow me, and that they were likely to try and approach some of them. Now, safe to say that everyone was pretty creeped out by that, but they've been very supportive and have been keeping an eye on them and what they are doing. I have started back at work. I asked for time off after they came to my door because of how uncomfortable and unsafe I was feeling with my stalkers being so close, and my kind neighbor has been helping me get out to work. I've been going out of my back door, climbing over her fence, and she's been letting me into her garage so I can get into the back of her car, and she then drives me to work. I basically duck down as low as I can as we're driving past them, so hopefully they can't tell that I'm leaving. So far, I don't think they've noticed me going to work, but I'm still very cautious every time I hear the door open at work, in case it's one or both of them. I don't feel safe getting a gun because of the risks it could bring. Scientology aren't above breaking into buildings for their own gain. One time, they even broke into an FBI building to replace FBI documents about them
with Scientology approved documents. If I had a gun and they were to break into my home, they're also not above planting things to frame people for crimes, if it means either scaring people to back down or into doing what they want. And if they found a gun, it could put me in danger. In Scientology, there is a policy called R245, and I really worry that them having any kind of access to a gun, even if it were mine, and being in my home could tempt them into following that policy. Alright, just a little bit of research. R245 is the act of shooting a person with a firearm in Scientology. Well, that's wonderful, isn't it? Oh, OP does actually then explain what R25 is. Yeah, I should probably explain what it is so you can hopefully understand why I'm worried about having a gun near me. Or them. In Scientology doctrine, exteriorization refers to the separation of the thetan, that's the soul, from the body, a phenomenon which LRH, who I believe is the founder of Scientology, could be wrong there, but I think so, asserts can be achieved through auditing. Yes, LRH is L. Ron Hubbard, who is the founder of Scientology. What a great guy. So, R245 is a process by which exteriorization could be produced by shooting a person in the head with a .45 pistol. Right, okay. This is acknowledged by Scientology, but they deny that it is meant to be serious publicly in order to protect themselves for people looking further into the cult's policies. But privately, I know so many who truly believe that the use of this policy is okay because it's what the founder said. Right, so they're pretty much just saying it's completely fine in their cult beliefs to shoot someone for exteriorization. Right, makes sense. I did ask my landlord about getting a dog. He originally said no because he doesn't allow pets in his property. But yesterday he called me and said I could have a dog if I still wanted to. He told me that he'd received letters from a few different Scientologists, including my parents, telling him how I am a drug addict and I get violent on a regular basis when high. My parents said in their letter that they're worried about me being out here on my own because without them to help control my violent outbursts, people could get seriously hurt. They claimed that they had proof that I was still using drugs and provided my landlord with a picture that the stalkers had obviously taken after looking through my trash. They told my landlord that they really didn't think it was a good idea to continue letting me live on my own in his house, and that he should help convince me to go back to them where they can get me back in line. The evidence they've used for me using drugs is an empty box of over-the-counter pain meds that I'd bought ages ago and I'd finished with. My landlord thinks that if these are the sorts of accusations they're willing to try throwing at me now, who knows what's next, or what they'll do if I continue to ignore them or refuse to go back. As long as I don't let the dog cause any damage to the property, he's okay with me having a dog to help protect me if they try and come to my door again, or if they attempt to break in for any reason. He's also given me permission to have security cameras installed both on the outside and on the inside of the house. We discussed it, and when I told him about my worries of them breaking in and their history of planting evidence of crimes on people, we agreed that having a few discreet cameras inside would be good. So if they did break in and try and plant anything, we'd have proof of them doing it. I've looked into the police in my area, and while some of the cops do seem reliable, there are a lot who seem to be very willing to overlook things Scientology do. So for now, I don't really trust in them to help me. I've contacted a lawyer who is going to help me with restraining orders against the stalkers and is willing to do the same to anyone else Scientology sends to harass me. I've also contacted the Aftermath Foundation, and they are being amazing and really helping me. And I really appreciate the suggestion I think a few people gave me to go to them. Well, as I said, guys, before we got into this one, if you haven't yet seen part 1, part 2 probably didn't make too much sense. But I remember at the end of part 1, I didn't really know what to say in terms of, get the police involved was my kind of only suggestion, I think. But clearly OP is not too, trustworthy in them. Sounds like he's doing the right thing though, getting lawyers in the mix, getting some restraining orders. Your landlord, by the way, what a legend. Going against his own policy, knowing that you need help. Really nice dude, actually. I appreciate that. Most landlords would not do that. So allowing you to get a dog to make you feel safer, very, very good stuff. Apart from that, I don't really know what to suggest. Again, guys, comment down below if you have any suggestions for OP, things that he hasn't listed, because it's a pretty terrible situation. If you don't know, he's run away from his family who were members of Scientology, pretty much. And now they're trying to get him back. sending people after him to make him come back. It's very, very weird. It's a terrible, terrible situation. I don't really know what to do apart from what you've already done. Fair play. Try to drug an innocent girl at a party? No, not while I'm here. So, to put it simply, I was a little idiot as a kid. I used to steal from stores and family, swear and throw things at random people walking down the streets. I was smoking from the age of 12, and I didn't give a dang about anyone but my friends. They were my real family, or so I thought, and the group of all 5 of us would cause trouble every single frickin' day. My parents, though in my later years have told me they should have been more effective in their discipline, really weren't to blame. I was just a mixed up kid. I used to think that doing all this stuff made me cool. I can't really describe how superior I felt when I made grown adults afraid of me, but it made me feel powerful, and power was something I craved when I was younger. I could go on and on about all my sins, but the fact is, I was just effed in the head. I've made amends where I can, to who I could, but you're not here for self-flagellation, you're here for my revenge. So, long story short, when I was 16, my parents finally had enough, and despite all my tantrums and screaming, and even some physical violence against my dad, they decided to put me in a school for troubled youth. I call it a school, but what it really was a military institution that taught discipline in the most brutally effective ways, while throwing in some literacy and numeracy classes along the way. Without going into too much detail, I'll say that this school changed me. While aggressive, violent, cocky, and near homicidal when I was first dumped on their doorstep, the men who ran this camp broke me down. I was there for just over a year. No phone calls, no visits home, no access to the outside world. For 1 whole year, I had this camp and these counselors, these real-life hard men, teach me just how much of a poop stain I really was. By the end of my second summer, I was a changed kid. I'd fought and screamed and gotten my butt kicked more times than I could count, but eventually I was beaten down. These men taught me that real men simply don't act the way I did, and that the type of path I was headed down would lead me either to jail or dead. They were brutally honest about it, especially this one counsellor, James. By the end of my stay, I considered James a second father. Though I hated him at first for making me feel inferior, he really did me a favour, teaching me how toxic my behaviour was, and to this day, I still think of him as something of a hero. He was the main person who deemed me ready to return home. But the backstory is getting really long, so let's get to the real story. When I returned home, I changed from an abusive little idiot to a somewhat civilised young man, ready to take on my last year of high school. I was nervous to go back, since I'd adapted to the disciplinary school lifestyle, but I was also excited. I missed my friends, and I hoped that they would just accept me back, despite the fact that I hadn't spoken to any of them in over a year. And, to my relief, I was accepted back with open arms. One of my closest friends had moved states since I'd been away, but the other 3 were ecstatic to see me. Over the next few weeks, I settled down, and I didn't spend a lot of time with them outside of school. My parents were kind of testing how much I'd matured since returning, and were setting boundaries on when I could go out, how long I could stay out, and where I could go, etc. I was determined to prove to them that I wasn't the same F-up that had ruined their lives for all those years. So I followed their rules, and so only really talked to my friends during school. Now, all of this is relevant because of what happened next. I had joined the school football team that all 3 friends were a part of, and one evening after practice, all my teammates were in the gym, sweaty and dirty, but pleased with ourselves. I was laughing and chatting with my 3 best friends, so much I didn't really notice that we were the last left in the gym. But that's when the conversation started turning bad. One of my friends, I'll call him friend 1 for simplicity, started telling me about a college party they were all planning on going to, and how they'd been crashing college parties for a few months now, since it was easy access to girls and booze. I was hesitant about it, because I didn't think my mum and dad would agree to let me go. But then my friend started talking about this girl he was planning on inviting. A girl who went to the same school as us, but not one I thought my friend had any real relationship with. I knew her, but I didn't know her. He started to tell both my other friends and me that he'd been trying to get her into bed for a while, and she kept making excuses, so we planned on taking her to the party and finally smashing. When I asked him, in a joking way, what makes you so sure she won't reject you again?
He looked me dead in the eye and said, as casually as you please, the most chilling sentence I have ever heard in my entire life. I'm just gonna slip something in her drink. It'll loosen her up, no problem. At first, I just kind of awkwardly laughed, thinking it was some effed up joke. But they weren't laughing with me. When I asked him if he was serious, he told me he was sick of her BS games and knew she was just stringing him along, and that the pills would just make things easier. I could not believe my freaking ears. I excused myself from the conversation pretty quickly and practically bolted home, most likely driving through several stop signs, but I really don't remember. I spent the whole night convincing myself my friends must have just been messing around. A few more days pass, and the conversation in the locker room is all but forgotten, though they hadn't shut up about the party and kept insisting that I just sneak out and join them. I got called a wuss repeatedly for telling them I wasn't going because of my parents, but again, I just brushed it off. Then the poop finally hits the fan. During yet another after-school training session, we all end up the last in the lockers, and my friend does something I never would have expected in 1,000 frickin' years. All three of my friends have been talking about the party this whole time. Then my first friend starts rummaging through his gym bag. He tells us all to look at this and tosses my second friend a small bag of little pink pills. Immediately, I feel the blood drain from my face, and like a bomb going off in my head, a voice in my mind is screaming, "Holy heck, this is really happening. This is serious. Holy frickin' heck." It's really hard to describe what I was feeling when my friend started going into detail about how he planned on inviting the girl to the party, slipping something into her drink, and making use of one of the frat boys' bedrooms for a few hours. I was sick. Like, I literally could have hurled everything from my stomach all over the floor as I listened to all three of them talk about how awesome the party was going to be after just describing how they were planning to R a girl. I couldn't take it, and again, I ran off. I actually did end up puking later that night, going over and over in my head what the F I'd just witnessed. I almost couldn't believe it. These three boys had been my friends for 15 years. I thought of them as my own family, thought I knew them better than anyone, but 1 year away and this? I'll tell you that I actually broke down crying that night, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. What I am ashamed of is how long I took to actually get a grip and handle it. I knew I should have told someone, but in some effed up way, my loyalties were still screwed. Don't crucify me for it. I now know what I should have done, but I was 17, and these were my best friends. I didn't want them to get into trouble, but at the same time, I knew I couldn't let this go down. So, instead of reporting all that I'd heard to an adult, like a normal person, I decided I'd sort it out all on my own. So, I went to my friend and told him not to do what he'd planned. I told him it was stupid, dangerous, and would ruin both his life and the life of the girl he was planning on drugging. He didn't even blink. He got right in my face and told me that the school I got sent to had turned me into a wuss, that he hated how much I'd changed and had been trying to change me back with my second and third friend. He even told me how they'd been talking about me behind my back and how they planned to give me a turn on the girl once my first friend was done with her, just to show me what I was missing out on. Then he said something I'll never forget. He told me, word for word, "I'm just doing that little dog a favor. She's a freaking virgin, and after this party, your mum won't be the only one finally getting some." I punched him. We fought, and we both got sent home on suspension for fighting. I couldn't freaking believe it. I was seething. My best friend had said that to me. My best friend had told me he was going to R an innocent girl at a party, and I was the wuss for not wanting to join in. I was disgusted, sickened to my core, and I was done with him. My parents were disappointed I'd gotten suspended so shortly after coming home, but I just sat quietly while my mum cried and my dad screamed at me. I know now that I should have told them, but after what my friend said to me, I had this insane notion in my head that I was going to get him back all on my own. And now to the revenge. After a weekend of being grounded, I went back to school, and the first thing I did was seek out my friend. He was about as bashed up as I was,
but he was sporting a nice black eye from where I'd hit him in the face. Our other 2 friends were standing with him, and they all glared at me as I approached them. Then I did something that made me feel sick. I apologized to him. I told him I was sorry I hit him and that he was right. I had changed and I hated what the school had done to me, and I wanted to go back to being the old me again. And surprisingly, they all bought it. My friend and I even hugged it out, and I put the cherry on top when I told them I'd be coming to the party. Now for my dumb teenage plan. First, I started recording them whenever we were alone together. I wanted to get everything they said about the party and the girl they were planning on victimizing on tape. I knew I needed some kind of proof, or it would just be my word against theirs. And after a few days, I'd gotten more than enough. But I wasn't done. No, my stupid self had a plan, and I was going to fulfill it to the fullest. So the next thing I did was track down the girl, take her aside, and tell her everything. She was angry and scared, but I begged her not to go to the police or tell anyone. I know again now that that was stupid as well, but for some reason she listened to me. I had a plan, a crazy, stupid plan to teach them all a lesson. So I told her to tell my first friend that she was going to meet him at the party, but to just stay home so she could stay safe. Later that day, my friend started bragging about how the girl had accepted his invitation and that everything was going to plan. And I sat there, phone half out of my pocket, recording the whole dang thing. So the night of the party finally rolls around, and I sneak out because, you know, I was grounded. I think it's worth mentioning that I wasn't filled with vindication and self-righteousness throughout the whole night. I was second-guessing myself. I had doubts, but in some strange way, I felt betrayed. These 3 boys had been my brothers since before I could throw a punch, and I felt betrayed that they had gone down this road. What effed me in the head even more was the possibility that I might have been just like them if my parents hadn't sent me away. It was a strange moment of realization to come to in the middle of a crowded frat house surrounded by drunk idiots, but you take what life throws at you. So the night goes on, and my friend is getting steadily more frustrated that the girl he invited hadn't shown up. I'd make sure to keep him in my sights for the whole night, not wanting him to decide that any old girl would do if he couldn't take the one he wanted. I kept an eye on all of them, watching as they drank and drank while I stayed as level-headed as possible with some water in a beer can. When midnight came, all 3 of them were plastered, and I knew that all the girls at the party would be safe by then. By this time, the crowd was dying down, and a few people who couldn't hold their liquor were already passed out around the house. And now was my time to shine. While all 3 of them were occupied with a drinking game, I hunted in my friend's bag and found the bag of little pink pills. Here's where I did something that I'm not particularly proud of, but I'll tell you anyway. I slipped 1 pill into 3 beers each and handed them to my friends. And then I waited. It didn't take long before all 3 were passed out on the floor, along with quite a few other party guests. I then took out a black permanent marker pen from my bag and wrote RS on all 3 of their foreheads, took pictures and immediately uploaded them to our school's Facebook page, so everyone who attended our school would see. Guys, by the way, sorry to interrupt here, but as you can probably tell throughout this whole video, you're not allowed to say certain words on YouTube because the video will just get, you know, instantly age restricted. So yeah, look on screen if you're not quite sure what I'm saying, but I'm sure the majority of you will understand. Admittedly, I didn't really think this part through, since I not only did this in full view of every other conscious person at the party, but I also knew the photos wouldn't last long on the school sites before they'd be taken down. But since it was a small school in a small town, I didn't doubt that a whole bunch of people would see it before a teacher removed the photos. And that's exactly what I wanted. Next came the recordings. When I got home, I got a verbal bludgeoning from my parents for sneaking out, but they stopped when I finally told them what had been happening. They were both shocked and a little disbelieving, but when I played them both the recordings I'd saved on my phone, they were just as sickened as I was. I was silent in the car as my dad drove me to the police station, receiving a lecture about how I should have just come to him in the first place, and what I'd done at the party wasn't necessary. but I felt like it was at the time. My phone had already blown up with other students commenting on the pictures of my 3 ex-friends with RS written on their foreheads. And while a lot just laughed at them, many were questioning if there was any truth to it. It was what I wanted. I wanted everyone to know who they really were, so they had nowhere to hide. The hours at the police station were admittedly very scary. I was still debating with myself whether or not I did the right thing, but my friends had chosen their own fates. I still felt hurt and betrayed that they'd allowed themselves to become this way. And even though I felt a little guilt for potentially ruining their future, I did what I thought had to be done. And long story short, the recordings were enough to get them all on charges of planning to commit a crime. Since the girl my first friend had been planning on drugging had been named, her parents were understandably furious and demanded that all 3 of my ex-friends be arrested. I would have been too, were it not for the girl telling her parents and the courts that I'd warned her to stay away from my friend and the party. I was charged for my use of an illegal substance, since I admitted to using the pills on my 3 ex-friends, and also for battery, since the permanent marker was seen as a form of assault, but luckily I never got jail time. I did get a boatload of community service though. All 3 of them were tried as adults in a case of attempted R, but only my first friend got actual jail time, since he was the one who'd gotten the pills and was the only one who admitted to wanting to use them. The other 2 only got probation and community service for being accessories, but were completely shunned in our town. No one ever let them forget. I was prepared for the backlash, ready to be jumped by them or something. But strangely enough, I think seeing my first friend go to jail for what he did knocked some sense into the 2 of them, and they wised up enough to actually get into college without football scholarships since they were both kicked off the team. They never came anywhere near me again, which surprised me, but I no longer cared. In my mind, my friends were dead to me long before all of this went down. And by the time I moved away to college, it was all behind me. I'm in my final year of college now, and I still think about those 3 sometimes. I think about how, if my parents hadn't sent me to that special school, I may have ended up just like them. Oddly enough, I do miss them at times, but I know it's the memory of the kids I miss, not the men they've turned into. I thank my parents continuously for sending me to that place, and I've even got some approval from my old teacher James when I felt man enough to tell him what happened. I don't know what will happen to my first friend when he gets out of jail, but a part of me hopes he learns his lesson and moves on with his life, like I have. James called me a few days ago just to check up, and I told him this whole story, which is kind of why I'm now telling the internet. I guess the moral is to stand up to your friends when you know they're doing wrong, but maybe not in the stupid way I did. Always involve others more qualified to deal with situations you're not sure about, even if you're a headstrong, stubborn as F teenager who thinks you know everything. Oh my god, I don't even know where to start with this story. Just insane. Look, I understand that legally OP did something that he wasn't supposed to do in terms of drugging this friend with the same drug that the friend planned on using to do horrible things to this innocent girl, but ultimately, would him just telling the police or his parents about it have had the same impact? I'm not sure it would, you know. I actually think there are quite a lot of similarities between OP and him being sent to a military school and him kind of having his life turned around for him, but him also accepting that fact, and him realizing that, you know what, actions are very important, and making someone understand how disgusting they're being by doing the same things onto them is a more effective way of, you know, educating them and having them realize how much of a horrible person they are than just them getting in trouble in the first place. Does that kind of make sense? For example, you know, when OP would have been at school with his old friends in the past and he said he was a horrible kid and, you know, didn't really do well in education, I assume that he got a lot of detentions and suspensions and stuff like that, but they didn't really seem to have any long-term effect on him. Whereas going to that military school and being disciplined and, you know, taught by people like James how to be a proper person and not be a horrible one seemed to have more of an effect on him. Now take that to what's just happened in the story. Say OP had just told the police and these guys had been given some community service or gone to jail for a tiny bit of time. I don't know if that would have had the same effect as giving them the drug, writing that word on their forehead, taking a picture, putting it on the school's Facebook page. I assume that everyone saw it, or at least it was saved. And, you know, I'm pretty sure that their parents would have seen it. That is like top level embarrassment and just like, you know, if anything is going to make you realize what you're doing, that will. Even more than going to jail in the first place. That's what I think anyway. So to have that incredibly dramatic effect, I think OP did the right thing. Yes, it's illegal, obviously, giving someone that pill, but, you know, to stop them doing something that is just terrible, not much is worse than that. I think it was all right, you know. I really do. What do you guys think? Do you think OP should have just, you know, gone to his parents immediately when he heard his friends talking like this, or gone straight to the police, or, you know, done this amazing plan of revenge? It's a tough one because ultimately it was illegal what he did, but it was incredible. Up to you. What do you reckon? Comment down below. As for his actual friends, or I guess ex-friends now, yeah, I mean, I have nothing to say to them. Someone that would even think about doing something like that, I don't even want to think about. So not even going to talk about that. That's just horribly disgusting. But OP, I think you did the right thing there. Congratulations to you on stopping something, by the way, that would have been unbelievably catastrophic. You're an absolute legend. Doesn't even matter how you went about stopping it. You stopped it. That's the important thing. Good lad. My father won't let me dye my hair, but lets my siblings. Ever since I was 8, I've wanted to cut my hair, dye it, and just change it in general. My parents, however, are extremely strict and never let me do anything more than trim my hair. They let me cut it when I was 5 and 9, but since then I haven't cut it or changed anything about it. I'm 19 years old now, and my hair has taken me 10 years to grow to my lower back. I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and just recently graduated high school. Since my siblings were young, I've been kind of like a third parent. My parents asked me for money for gas, electricity, water, etc. I've also always been the one that my parents use as a therapist, babysitter, and would oftentimes take the money I'd earn from beading hats, babysitting, or even just money I was gifted. When the stimulus checks came out, I had a claim to my money, but they wouldn't give it to me. Then, my nation gave out checks to its people, and when asked, I had to give my money over. I thought they'd use the money for the house or things like that, but they used the money on a trip to Florida with our family. Growing up, my parents were extremely strict. In school, my father hated it if I brought home a grade less than 95%, and I'd usually get in trouble if I did. My siblings? Same thing. I nearly failed 5th grade and was grounded for months. I wasn't even allowed to have electronics, like a DS, iPod, or phone. My screen time was always limited to Mahjong and Solitaire on our family Mac computer. That means no social media, no real way of contacting people. I wasn't even able to have an email until I was 9, and even then, they had to have every single password I had. My siblings, on the other hand, were able to have more freedom online than I did. They got electronics given to them, where I had to actually pay for my first 3DS. I was given my first phone with service when I was 17 because they couldn't get a hold of me after a football game. Again, they needed the password and I couldn't keep anything private. My siblings were, again, not given the same rules. It makes me absolutely angry how my parents have this awful double standard. Now, my siblings always get their haircuts and get to change their style. I was told to keep mine long for my senior pictures because my family is native and they wanted pictures in my regalia. For those who don't know, a regalia is a native ensemble for our ceremonies, powwows, and other such things. I was gifted the regalia for a graduation present. My family wanted pictures, but it hasn't happened yet. I've asked my parents to let me dye it or cut it since then, but they don't want my unnatural hair in my regalia photos, which I understood. From my understanding, my siblings had the same rules as me and wouldn't be able to cut it after a certain point and would have to grow it out like I did. That is, until today. My sibling, 16 years old, let's call him Ethan, sent a picture of him and my sister, Kate, 14, getting their hair cut and dyed. It was cut to their shoulders and dyed blue and purple. Instantly, I felt jealous. Why were my siblings allowed to cut their hair? I asked my father, but I never could. I said to him, why would you let Ethan cut his hair if I couldn't until my senior pictures? Well, they're younger than you, and they'd asked us to do this for them as a birthday gift. You could have too if you'd just asked us. I've asked you and Mum several times over the past several years, and you always told me to wait until my senior pictures were done. And you still won't let me. We won't let you because we're waiting to get your regalia photos done. Well, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen. I've been waiting 10 years to cut my hair. The girls haven't had the same rules. That's not fair. They still have a few years to grow their hair, It doesn't matter. Okay, fine. Well, Ethan is graduating next year. That is 1 year to grow his hair out and be an unnatural colour. That's literally impossible. It's not fair for you to say that I can't cut or dye my hair, but he can. Well, it's just hair. It doesn't matter. Right, so if I cut and dye my hair right now, you wouldn't care? No, you can't. You're not allowed until you get pictures done. Now I'm angry at this point. That is BS. You can't say I can't do something and then turn around, let my siblings, who are younger, still in school, and literally let them do whatever. I'm cutting it and dyeing it. If you want pictures, I'll do them with my dyed hair. I then walked to my room and just started typing this story. I don't know what to think. On one hand, I'm upset that my parents are being absolute hypocrites and not holding my siblings to the same standard. On the other hand though, I do feel bad because I guess I understand that since I just got my regalia, they want me to look traditional. I need help. What do you guys think? Wow, interesting story there. Yeah, like OP, I completely agree that until your dad said that your other siblings were getting treated differently in regards to their hair and what they need to do for graduating, growing it out and respecting tradition of their family, etc., I was on board with it. You know, it makes sense. If your parents really want you to have a certain hairstyle, a traditional hairstyle that, you know, your family have had throughout the ages for your regalia, then that makes sense to me. The difference is though, when it becomes clear that your other siblings just have different rules for them. Why is that? I don't know. It's just favoritism, isn't it, really? Those of you that have been around on my channel for a long time now, a very, very long time, may remember ages ago that I told you all about the fact that I had dyed my hair back in the day, maybe 3-4 years ago now, a while ago, platinum blonde. I thought it looked alright, to be fair, although it was for a dare. But anyway, thankfully, my parents didn't say, oh my god, no, you can't do that or I'm going to disown you. They just let me do it. Sweet. Alright then, now moving on to our second entitled parent story. Entitled parents wouldn't accept a solution and gets banned from water park forever. This happened a couple of years ago, but it still makes me shake my head. I, a 19-year-old female, had a job working at a water park dispatching rides. Some of the rides require the guests to get a tube at the bottom of the ride and carry it up to the top. Water park employees know that only certain tubes can be used on certain rides. If you use the wrong tube on the wrong ride, you're asking for people to be injured. The ride I was working had water jets that exploded from the bottom of the ride, so the tubes had to be very durable. Anyway, an entitled mum and her entitled kids are waiting in line. I can see that they've grabbed the wrong set of tubes from the bottom of the ride. They have clear tubes, which are not nearly durable enough for this ride, when they needed reinforced blue tubes. I go over to the mum and explain that she has the wrong tube for this ride. One of the correct tubes is placed next to the entrance to the ride, so it's pretty clear which tube goes to which ride. I tell her that when she gets to the front of the line, she'll need to step to the side and I can have a worker run down and grab some correct tubes for them. She can still go on the ride, someone just needs to bring her the right tubes. But the entitled mum doesn't acknowledge me at all. Anyway, she gets to the front of the line and tries to sit in her tube to go down the ride. Mum, I'm sorry, this isn't the correct tube, I say. I've radioed to have someone bring the correct tube up for you and your party, but I can't let you ride down in this tube. It's not safe and you could get hurt. Please, stand to the side until your tubes get here. I waited in line, she said. You can't tell me what to do. I'm going down the ride. Get the F out of my way. You can't go down the ride in this tube. It's not safe. Get the F out of my way, you female dog. Then, the crazy part. She throws the tube at my face. It's bulky and not heavy, so I can easily dodge it, but now I have to call security too. My manager is the person who was trekking the tubes up, and upon hearing my call for security, he drops the tubes and comes sprinting to me. The entitled mum is now destroying the landscaping around the top of the ride and is encouraging her kids to join in. How dare this dog make us wait? This idiot won't let you on the ride. Now guys, I'm 19. I'm not paid to put myself in harm's way, so I do nothing to stop her or her kids. She's literally pulling out grass and spitting in my general direction. I picked up the tube she threw and I'm sitting on it on the side of the ride. The entitled kids, of course, join in and are spitting in my general direction and ripping up dirt and plants. I'm 10 feet away, so no spit got near me. And that is how this entitled mum and her entitled kids got banned from the park forever. The tube she needed, which the manager was carrying up, were literally 10 stairs away from her.
It was around a curve, so she couldn't see them.
Yeah, stories like this I'll just never get in my life, guys. I'm sorry. Seriously, like, what's the maximum amount of waiting time going to be there? Maybe 2 or 3 minutes maximum? Does it really matter that much that you have to wait 2 or 3 minutes to enable yourself to go down the ride? And also, OP, who by the way is an employee at this water park, has just told you it might be very dangerous if you go down in the wrong tube. You're there with your kids. Why would you put them in unnecessary danger? Just have a little bit of patience, go down the slide in the correct tube, and have a nice time. It's so strange. Entitled mum lets her son destroy a 100-year-old antique table. I, a 24-year-old woman, previously posted in r/childfree about one of my mother's younger friends, an entitled mum in her early 40s, who I first knew as carefree and wonderful until she had her first kid. That child ended up being a complete brat with her mother's encouragement. But the entitled mum had another child, a son, who's now 4 years old, who I kind of liked because he wasn't as intense as his older sibling. As of last night, that has changed. For context, my mother's greatest joy in life, other than her kids, is antiquing. She dresses every room in her house very carefully and will stop at every vintage shop around to find a piece of furniture, sometimes using road trips to find new antique stores and examine what's inside. I used to hate going with mum to these stores, but since she took all 3 of us kids and told us that these used to belong to other people, I think it gave us an early respect for other people's things. We were never the kids to break stuff or jump on furniture in our homes or anyone else's, and I'm pretty sure that that contributed to it. When she was pregnant with my oldest sibling in 1990, mum found a small circular wooden table with 3 curved legs topped with a circle of marble. The shop proprietor told her it was 70 years old, so she bought it for a song, shined it up, and stuck it in her living room, where it immediately became a staple of our house. The coffee table lasted her through 3 kids' college graduations, a move in 2000, and countless family parties and events. Still shiny and looking new and gorgeous. It's as much a part of the family now as any of us kids. Now to last night. The entitled mum's birthday recently occurred. So, since she'd given mum a birthday celebration last month, mum decides to return the favour, inviting the entitled mum, her husband, and their kids to our house for lobster. Already, I'm not a fan of this. Whenever the entitled mum and her kids come over, my mum makes a serious effort to give the kids something fun to do while the adults talk. We have a collection of colouring books, blocks, dolls, Legos, puzzles, action figures, and a TV in the basement from when my siblings and I were growing up. And mum even bought them some new toys herself. But inevitably, the kids would play down there for 2 minutes and then come to their mum to complain that they're bored, then proceed to wreak havoc on our house. My parents, who the entitled mum sees as her kids' aunt and uncle, have warned the kids many times not to jump on things, but they do not listen. The oldest kid is also very combative and likes to pull hair and hit people, as I learned firsthand, and broke a holiday decoration given to my dad by his late mother. Of course, the entitled mum coddles her kids and coos that they're the best in the world and all that BS. I've told my mum repeatedly that I don't want to be around the kids or their parents, but she brushes it off. In fact, she likes to tease me for not interacting with the entitled mum and not coming downstairs when she visits, and says that the entitled mum shouldn't get in the way of me living my life. I live with my folks and I'm invited to attend the party, but I make my usual choice of opting out. Since I've just finished the first week of a new job, I intend to celebrate with a day at the bookstore and a night with friends. But yesterday morning, as I was preparing to leave, mum asked why I was going to leave her to deal with the 2 kids by herself. I told her that I wasn't going to let them get in the way of me living my life. She laughed and wished me a good day, and I left. My day was wonderful. I spent the morning and early afternoon at my favourite bookstore, the evening with my friends at a wine bar, and the night with them at a karaoke room. I come home around 11:30 that night and enter from a door in our sunroom, where my parents are asleep on the couch watching TV. I wake them up, tell them about my day, and they seem genuinely happy it went so well. To be polite, I ask how the party went. My folks get quiet and look at each other, and my mother, sounding very drained, tells me to go into the living room, the next room over. Confused, I look through the doorway and immediately see why. The beautiful table Now, a century old is broken. Its 3 curved wooden legs were bisected and splintered. There's a small crack in the marble top, and a collection of wood shards litter the carpets. What happened? I asked. Earlier that day, around 6:30 p.m, my dad and the entitled mum's husband went to pick up my grandpa, plus a steamer for the lobster. While they were away, mum had worked to settle the kids into the basement and reminded them not to jump on anything, then gone to the living room to converse with the entitled mum. As they are talking, my mother leaves to go to the restroom at the other end of the house. She stops in the kitchen before returning and hears a crash in the living room. Mum runs in. And lo and behold, the 4-year-old son had become bored, come upstairs to the living room, and started jumping on furniture, including the ancient table, while his entitled mum just watched. My mother is predictably horrified and stares as the entitled mum examines her son for injuries and reassures my mum that the kid is fine. Mum gets sick to her stomach, takes the son aside and tells him in a serious but not yelling voice that Auntie is very disappointed in him and that he knows the rules at my house. The entitled mum overhears and berates my mum, telling her that she is the only one who can speak that way to her kids, before cuddling her son and telling him that he's going to be okay. Mum then outright asked the entitled mum if she herself told the kids not to jump on furniture at our house. She replies casually, "No, I didn't tell them not to." The husbands return and all 3 men are shocked. The entitled mum's husband immediately offers to pay a carpenter to fix the table, which my mother accepts. Dinner goes on, but it's cold and impersonal between mum and the entitled mum. This morning, the entitled mum, her son, and the husband came by our house to give mum a bouquet of flowers, an apology, and the number of a carpenter who they'll pay for. She puts on a smile and says thank you, but she's very upset nonetheless. My dad doesn't want the kid in our house again until he's older. Mum says she'll be keeping her distance from the entitled mum for the time being, since she can't teach her kids to respect other people's property or discipline them properly. My heart breaks for my mum. I don't plan on having kids, but if you do, please teach them at an early age to respect other people and their things. Oh yeah, look, I mean, you can obviously get this kind of like semi-repaired. I don't think it'll be by a carpenter, but by someone that knows what they're doing. I'm sure they can do a good job on it and, you know, get it close to how it was before. But this is an antique. You know, you're never gonna get it in that perfect condition that it was in before this idiot of a son. Sorry, I don't blame the kid. This idiot of a mother let her son jump on it and just destroy it. Like, why go through all the hassle of letting your kid jump on furniture when you know your friend is massively into antiques anyway, and these items of furniture can't just be replaced like that? It's not as if it's like some desk from IKEA. No, it's 100 years old, by the way. Why just not tell your kid in the first place to not do these things and avoid the hassle of him obviously breaking things? He's 4 years old. He's gonna do that if you don't tell him not to. Come on, it's so like illogical, I don't get it. Right then, now moving on to our second story of today's episode. Entitled parent throws coffee on me when I'm half her age. So, this happened years ago now, at my first job, but I figured I'd finally post it. It remains, to this day, 17 years later, the worst customer experience I've ever had. So, 15-year-old me has their first job at an amusement park. I worked in the games department, and this day I was working one where you fish magnets out of the water that moves around. Pick up yellow, you get a small prize. Pick up a red magnet, you get a medium one. You pick up both red and yellow, it counts as yellow, you get a small prize, and shaking the magnets off to try again gets you banned from the park for cheating at the games. People, needless to say, don't realize this. So the first time, we always just tell people, hey, just so you're aware, shaking the magnets off can be considered cheating. So for next time, make sure you just leave them on, okay? Now we get to the main story. So, an entitled kid who is about 9 or 10 and his entitled mum, who is early to mid-30s, walk up to the booth. And my co-worker takes the money, gives the kid the stick with a magnet, and goes to help someone on the other side, while I'm restocking our medium price display. The kid goes for a red magnet, and catches about 6 yellow magnets instead. Well, he doesn't want a small prize, obviously. So, he looks at my co-worker, grins when he sees she isn't paying attention to him, and starts shaking them off. I, however, did see, so I grabbed the small prize bin, walk over, and put my hand on the stick, not on him. Okay, go ahead and pick your small prize. Just so you know, too, shaking the magnets off can be considered cheating. So for, excuse me, the entitled mum interrupts. How dare you accuse my son of cheating? He doesn't cheat. Oh, sorry, she then starts to yell. He would never cheat, you frickin' dog. How dare you accuse him of that? He's a good boy, you little idiot. I'm getting you fired for this, you little frickin' female dog. She takes the lid off her cup while yelling at me. I hadn't noticed at the time because I was 15 getting screamed at by a random adult and threw her half-full coffee at me. It wasn't burning hot, but it was still warm. By this point, of course, other workers in nearby games had more than noticed, along with a small group of adults who were playing the games too. She seemed to realize she probably shouldn't have thrown the coffee when I burst into tears and just started sobbing on the spot. I mean, I was 15 and at the time not emotionally stable by any stretch. So she grabs her entitled kid's arm and drags him off, throwing the small prize back into the booth without aiming. I'm honestly not sure where it landed as I wasn't in a good state. Must have been Texas then, I guess. Okay, can I say that? No. The co-worker at the whack-a-mole station ran back to call security since we had a phone behind the whack-a-mole booth. And the people at the milk jug toss and scatterball stations ran over to help me out of the booth, with the co-workers at our booth, and into where the phone also was, to get me out of the public eye while security came and took everyone's descriptions of the entitled mum. Fortunately, no one had left and security got to us fast. The entitled mum was caught up with soon enough, as they did a park-wide search and took her name and picture for the do not admit list. I didn't think to press any charges at the time. In retrospect, I wish I had. I went home early too, since I couldn't stop crying until long after my dad picked me up. He got me ice cream later and watched a really bad horror movie with me. It was our dad-daughter thing. Unfortunately, I'd had the following couple of days off anyways. I have never forgotten this incident, and it remains my worst customer service experience. Though hardly the only time I've been yelled at, it is the only time I've been physically assaulted on the job. Wherever Karen is these days, I hope she realizes what a monster she is. But I doubt that. She'd be in her late 40s or early 50s by now, and now that I'm the age she was at the incident, I cannot even imagine yelling like that at someone half my age over something so minuscule. Yeah, OP, I'm not surprised that you wouldn't do something like that right now. I mean, I wouldn't either, and I doubt that you watching right now would do it either, because it's ridiculous. Throwing a coffee over a 15-year-old girl because you're annoyed at a game at a theme park. Are you dumb? Well, to answer my own question, yes, she is. There's a reason none of us would do it. It's because we're not really stupid Karens. Like, yeah, you can be annoyed if you want because the game rules are slightly confusing, I do admit. But doing that? No way. No way. And now moving on to our final story of today's episode. Cult talkers think they can scare me out of my new home. I should give you guys just a little backstory on how I ended up in this situation. I grew up in Scientology. My parents joined back in 1991 and moved to the States to be involved more than they could from the UK. In 2015, when I was 15, I joined the Sea Org and signed a billion-year contract. I know how insane that is, but it was something my parents were pressuring me to do because they thought it would allow me to be the best Scientologist I could be. But last August, I saw my opportunity to leave and I took it. I was sent out with a group of other Sea Org members to confront some people who had been declared as suppressive people, SPs, who were outside the building. One of them said they had a permit to film some stuff in the streets, and since it was public that we couldn't stop them, and that it was in the car parked about 5 minutes away from where we were. One of the women I'd come out with told me to go with the guy and check it out, so I did. When we got around the corner, I told the guy I wanted to leave, but hadn't been able to because there was always someone watching. He suggested that maybe, since we were out of sight, maybe we could get into his car and he would drive me to a hotel, get me a room so I could plan where I could go after a couple of days. I took the opportunity and I got into his car. I finally felt so much freedom that I'd never felt before. He, as it turns out, had also been a Scientologist and had escaped from Gold Base years ago, so he understood my situation very well. Now, once I figured out that I wanted to go to Washington, he got in contact with some friends of his who were able to get me there without Scientology having any way of tracing my movements. And I've been here ever since. I live in a nice neighborhood, well, at least to where I had been before, and I've managed to get a job working in a coffee shop. I've been so happy to be free, but I never fully stopped looking over my shoulder. I know the policies regarding people like me, and I've been keeping an eye out for them ever since I left. 2 months ago, I noticed that a car with tinted windows was following me. I knew it was down to Scientology. They'd somehow found out where I'd moved and were trying to gather information on me. Last week, they finally knocked on my door. Even though I knew it was going to happen sooner or later, I was shaking. My neighbor, who's always been really kind to me, was over. She comes over sometimes just to check on me, and she'll bring me food if she feels like I haven't eaten properly. She's basically been like a mum to me, and I love her for it. I opened the door and things got really uncomfortable real fast. It was a couple of entitled stalkers from the Scientology group standing in front of me. Your parents have been worried about you, and you're hiding out here. Why? I'm not hiding. I just don't want to be in a cult anymore. Liar. You are a criminal. You broke your contract and you fled. You are evil. My kind neighbor then comes to the door and interrupts. Hold on a minute, stop shouting. OP is not evil and she's free to live her life as she pleases. Now leave her property or I will call the police. The second entitled stalker holds a camera pointed at my face. You are a suppressive person. You may not set foot in any Scientology building again. If you do, we will have you charged with harassment. I was confused by this. But you're the ones who tracked me down. I know the policies. I know I'm an SP. I know about being disconnected with my family. So what do either of us gain from you being here? My neighbor said, put the camera down. No. My neighbor then closes the door in their faces and goes to close the curtains, as I told her that they would probably try filming through my windows. I went and closed all other curtains in my home, and after my neighbor left, I locked my doors too. They are still watching my house from a car across the street, and I feel uncomfortable about going outside. I know what methods can be used by Scientologists who are fair gaming an SP. I know now, after watching Going Clear and Leia Ramini's show, that my experience with them after leaving is tame, but it's still pretty creepy. Why they feel entitled to follow people around to a point where I'm basically a prisoner in my own home, I don't know. But I wish they'd leave me alone. I'm not sure what information they've gathered on me, but I know whatever it is will have been sent back, and it will be used against me in some way. But until they try and use it, I have no way to really do anything. If anyone has any advice, please let me know. Oh my God, OP, I'm so sorry that you're in this situation. This is so effed. Like, my God. Guys, put yourself in OP's shoes for a moment. There are people across the street in a car, perma watching his gaff. What the heck? Like, you've done amazingly to escape in the first place. I have to commend you for that. What bravery, you know, great quick thinking to get out of there, you know, in the chance that you could. Fantastic. But now to feel like you're being watched for the rest of your life, always having to watch over your shoulder, like, oh my God, man. What is this? I need to do some more research into Scientology as a whole. Guys, if you know more about this cult and, you know, what they do and their practices and how they clearly stalk people who leave, comment down below and enlighten me, because I don't know too much, I've got to be honest. I'm going to do some more research as soon as I finish recording this video, if I'm completely honest. But wow, what would you advise him to do right now? OP, that is. I don't know what you can do. Call the police? Apart from that, I've got nothing. But I don't really think that the police are going to be able to do much. The car's just going to drive away. Then it will come back. What can OP do? Entitled Facebook Parents demands library removes all mentions of the LGBTQ+ community. This text shown below was taken from a Facebook post, which I came across moments ago, and immediately thought of this subreddit. Enjoy. So, here is the beginning of the post. Am I being paranoid? This was supposed to be a post about a wonderful new library that we found on our way back home from school. Instead, this is a call for help. More than ever, we need to protect our children from this evil indoctrination. Let me give you a little background. You probably all know how much we love libraries and books. With that being said, when we learned that the brand new West Perry Library finally opened their doors, we immediately headed over there. We found this awesome, almost magical place with a huge children's section. It is amazing. The kids just went crazy over the beautiful furniture, the toys, the decoration, and of course, the crazy amount of colourful children's books. We started going there almost every day. They no longer wanted to go to our other favourite places. No more playgrounds, pools, other libraries, or even the museum. All they wanted to do is go to the new library. But my excitement died quickly. Now I'm horrified and deeply upset. I want you to take a look at all the rainbow books that we have found in this magical place. Tons and tons of these materials, they are everywhere. In the kids section, in every bookshelf, even the baby shelves, the teen section, adult section, Spanish section, there's even a designated section for LGBTQ teens. Am I going crazy? Am I being paranoid? Do you see what I see? Are you concerned too? Please tell me this is not normal. We've been to other libraries, even during Pride Month, and we've never seen so many books normalizing this lifestyle. Never. Dear rainbow people, as my kids respectfully call you, isn't your sexuality something private that you're free to live in your own terms behind your door? Why are you trying to impose this on my children? Why? Dear concerned parents, please help me call this library or your local one if you've seen these books on every shelf as well. Help me make a respectful request to withdraw this material from our kids' reach. Us parents should be the sole educators of our kids in this important matter, and not beautiful, colourful, innocent books from our public libraries. That is not what our tax money should be used for. And that was the end of the Facebook post. Oh my days, what a roller coaster. As you can imagine, the replies were not what the person expected, and the page has given up responding to any comments that are posted. There are many other entitled posts on their page, as well as many homophobic ones. Let me know if you'd like to see any more. Like, honestly, what am I even supposed to say to this one? Seriously. Like, there's nothing that I can even say. It's the most stupid stuff I've ever read in my life. It is so dumb. On a public platform to write that. Like, to believe it is one thing. To write that as your views and expect other people to agree with you and say, yeah, you're so right. Let's get rid of the rainbow books. Are you dumb? Well, clearly you are. It's unbelievable. It really, really is. Okay, look, it's actually a great comment. I'm just going down the comments of this post. Librarian here. I've always said a good library has something to offend everyone. Everyone has the right to read what they want, and no one has the right to tell someone what they can't read. True. A library's got something to offer everyone, and a library's also got something to offend anyone, because, you know, it does offer something to everyone, and obviously not everyone's going to like everything in a library. Obviously. Jeez. Don't go putting it on Facebook though, you idiots. Now moving on to our next post. Entitled parent steals my badge and risks jail time over a gallon of milk. Alright, so maybe it's cliche, but let me start by saying that I've been a long-time lurker and literally never expected something like this to happen to me. I regularly giggle to myself about how exaggerated or made up the stories on here are, because no one actually acts like this, right? Well, apparently I was very mistaken about just how entitled people can be, because this story happened to me yesterday. Please enjoy. A little background to start off. I started a new job with the county about a month ago. I was hired to be a juvenile correctional specialist. It's not a glamorous job, but I absolutely make sure my clients are safe, afforded every right they're entitled to, and I treat them with respect and dignity. That being said, I don't live in a great area, and my uniform looks a lot like a police officer's uniform, so I never wear it outside of work if I can help it, just because I don't want to deal with potential issues, which seems to be the right call after this incident. It is also important to note that during my orientation, my training officer spent a literal hour explaining the many ways that are appropriate and inappropriate when it comes to representing oneself. For instance, in our county, I'm considered and therefore legally allowed to refer to myself as an officer of the peace, an officer of the county, an officer of the court, and a correctional officer. At no point and for no reason am I ever legally allowed to represent myself as, or even imply that I am an officer of the law, a police officer, or any other title of that nature. If someone assumes I am a cop, I legally have to correct them, or I could potentially lose my job, be fined, or even be arrested based on the situation. I will point out, however, that my uniform and badge carry the same legal obligations and repercussions when it comes to damage, theft, etc., because it's all considered county property. So yesterday, I get done working a double and get ready to leave work. I hadn't expected the forced overtime, so I hadn't checked the weather for the evening shift. Lo and behold, I had left my windows cracked through a rainstorm, and my extra shirt and jacket had gotten soaked. This would have been fine because it was dark, so I wasn't worried about someone seeing me go from my car to my house. But we were out of milk, and I really needed to stop at the Mart of Wolves. Normally, I just take off my uniform shirt and badge and throw on my extra shirt. But I didn't really feel like donning a soggy top or going into the store in the tank top I wear under my uniform shirts. Plus, it was 50 minutes till close, and I was just running in and out, so what's the worst that could happen? Famous last question right there. I ran in, grabbed the milk, grabbed some ice cream because why not, and headed to self-checkout. The line was pretty long and wrapped around towards the entrance, so I was in a random entitled lady's direct line of sight when she stepped through the doors. Now, while she didn't fit the mold of the traditional Karen, I think she still counts. She was an older woman, probably in her 50s, in heels and a rather low-cut sundress, fake tan, fake hair, and clearly fake boobs. I clock her making a beeline straight for me in my periphery and continue staring straight forward because something about her seemed a little off. Maybe it was the odd gait with the slight stumble every few steps, or the fact that she was kind of mumbling to herself, but I had a feeling she was under the influence of something. She got about 5 feet away and I could smell the alcohol emanating from her. She then reached out and firmly tapped my shoulder. The following is our conversation, nearly word for word, as best as I can remember. "Excuse me, I'm so glad I made it before they closed." "That's great," I say, continuing to stare forward, attempting to ignore this woman. "Well, I just came in because I really need milk for my kids' breakfast tomorrow. Do you think you could help me out a bit?" "Sure, the milk is on the wall at the back of the store. Just head straight back down that main aisle and you'll walk straight into the dairy section." She looks at me dumbly for several seconds. "Well, that's not really what I meant. You see, I noticed that you have the same kind of milk that my family drinks, so I thought maybe you could let me have it. That way I can get home to my kids sooner. You know what, I'm very tempted to go and down a beer so I can enact this woman better, but I'm not going to do it. No thank you, I'm good." "Wait, what does that mean? I can't have the milk?" "That is correct. You can take 3 minutes to walk back and get your own milk, just like I did. That's how groceries work." Again, she stares at me for several moments, trying to process the situation through the haze of intoxication. "You are being incredibly rude, and you shouldn't even be in here." "How do you figure that?" "Well, my tax dollars aren't supposed to be paying for the police to go shopping while on duty. Now give me that milk, and I want your badge number so that I can talk to your superiors about your inappropriate behavior." "Mom, I am not a police officer, and I am not on duty. I just happened to be coming home from work and I still have my uniform on." The woman then started to shriek and attract attention. "You're obviously lying. I can see your badge right there. I won't let you get away with lying just to protect your job." At this point, she begins to claw at the badge-shaped patch that is sewn onto the upper right shoulder of my uniform shirt. Not wanting to escalate things further, I took a step back and grabbed my real badge to show her. Now, it's not like a metal badge or a jacketed ID like cops or detectives carry. It's literally just a laminated card in a clear pouch attached to a retractable clip on my belt. The pocket also contains my electronic access card to the jail itself. The whole jail, not just the juvenile side, which was about to become a huge deal. I hold up my badge and show her. See how it says correction specialist, not police officer? Bold as anything, this crazy drunk reaches out, snatches my badge out of my hands, and rips it off my belt. Now at this point, the bystanders that had been nervously standing and muttering amongst themselves went silent, because like most sane and rational human beings, they realised that it's never a good idea to take the badge of someone in a uniform, whether they're a cop or not. I myself took a moment to respond, because I truly could not understand the idiocy of stealing anything, let alone a badge, over a gallon of milk. I would have been within my rights to grab her and force her to give it back. But again, I didn't want things getting out of hand, so I decided to reason with her. Mom, I don't think you realize the consequences of what you've just done. That is the badge of a county officer, and stealing one is a misdemeanor if you're lucky. However, behind that badge is my swipe card for the jail. You've literally just stolen a key to the county jail, which is a felony with a potential 10-year sentence. This is absolutely true, by the way. I think you should probably hand it back to me right now, because I don't think a gallon of milk is really worth a decade of your life. The entitled woman now starts to look a little nervous. That's not what I meant to do. She looks at the bystanders for support. You guys saw how she was being rude to me, right? I was just trying to get her information and she wouldn't give it to me. I didn't do anything wrong, right? Unbeknownst to either of us, one of the customers ahead of us was either an off-duty cop or retired. I couldn't tell which. He piped up with, Mom, I'd do as the officer suggests if I were you. I can't slap cuffs on you right now, but I've got a few guys on speed dial that would happily do it for me. And since they patrol this area, I'd say you've only got a couple of minutes to make your choice. And with that, he pulled out his phone and started swiping. Wait, sorry, so this guy just went on Tinder, randomly. I thought he was going to call his police mates, but swiping, hey, hopefully he found someone to match with. I don't know. All the colour drained out of the entitled parent's face, and she basically flung my badge at me as she jerkily rushed out of the store, ranting, mumbling loudly, something about how it was just a goddamn gallon of milk. I thanked the older guy and told him not to bother calling anyone. Everyone got through the checkout like responsible adult human beings, and I got to go home and enjoy my ice cream, having learned that I should really just do my shopping on my days off. Wow, a Karen plus alcohol is a deadly combination. I mean, look, you thought entitled people were bad. Give them a bit of alcohol as well, and wow, that's another level. Incredible. By the way, guys, comment down below, what did you think of my drunk entitled Karen impression? Was it good? I can't say it's based off experience, but I thought I'd just, try and slow my words a little bit. Let me know if it was good or not, or just sounded like I was about to have a stroke. It's either the two. Let me know down below. As for this story in particular, I mean, again, what can I really say apart from, you just don't do that. You just don't steal someone's badge. It also doesn't even matter, what it is of theirs. Don't steal anything from anyone. Why is she trying to take your badge off you? I don't get it. I really, really don't. Now, I do agree with her. Obviously, she wasn't trying to steal your jail key card, but still, don't steal anyone from anyone ever. What's the point? What are you going to gain? Are you going to try and sell the badge on eBay? What's the point? I don't get it. Wait, sorry, I've just clocked. Did this post say at the end that she got back in her car? Wait, sorry, she jerkily rushed out of the store. Did she get back in her car? She must have driven to the store, right? I assume this happened in America. Normally people drive to stores, do they not? To put your grocery away when you're finished with it. Otherwise just walking home, right? Did she get back in her car? If she did, that's a DUI right there. I can't work it out from the post. It's annoying. OP hasn't said it, but if she got back in her car, wow. Entitled mother wants to monitor 20-year-old daughter's texts. I am 20 years old. I moved out of my parents' house roughly 2 years ago, and I live in a house with 2 roommates. I am completely independent from my parents. I pay my rent for my house. I have my own medical insurance. I own my car and pay my own car insurance. I don't even have to ask mummy and daddy for grocery money. Both of my roommates and I each have our own pets. We've got 3 dogs and a cat amongst the 3 of us. We've had some conflict about the animals. I've been visiting my parents for about a month, so I've been keeping up pretty steady contact with the roomies through text. My mum started asking about what I was talking about with my roommates. She knows about the conflict, and I just described the conversation to get her on the same page. But apparently, that wasn't good enough. She asked to see the text between my roommates and I. She'd also asked to see my text a few nights before, and then she picked apart every word and made me feel terrible. So I said no. I told her she shouldn't have to see her 20-year-old daughter's text to feel secure, and that I was setting a boundary and wouldn't be showing her my texts anymore. At this point, she started calling me immature, ungrateful, and secretive. I've been working remotely while visiting and was on the clock during this conversation, so I just walked back to my desk. My mum went up to her room, slammed the door, and started screaming at my dad, "She's a child! She's an immature child!" over and over again. Wow, what a wonderful start to today's Entitled Parents episode. Let me tell you, my sister is 20 years old, and if my mum, from out of nowhere, started demanding to see her texts, well, that would probably be World War III, and I'd move out with immediate effect. Now moving on to our second Entitled Parent story. Entitled Dad threatens to beat me up because I charged his daughter for gas on a rental car. Long time lurker here. I love reading all of these stories, since I love watching entitled people get what they deserve. Who doesn't? After all of the things I've read, it got me thinking if I have any stories to share. And it turns out I have tons of great stories from the various places that I've worked. One place in particular was a national rental car chain, where I have the best stories. Before working there, I thought the industry was just going to be full of business guys and vacationers, so I wouldn't really have to deal with much rubbish. Boy, was I young and dumb. This particular branch was hit or miss. Some days we would be crazy busy, others we'd be so slow we'd take out for oil changes just for the heck of it, to give us something to do. On one particular day, both my manager and assistant manager asked if they could go grab food for all of us, and if I could man the shop. Everyone there was super chill, even the managers, so there was a lot of just chilling around. I of course agree and chill, look at my phone, when the office phone starts to ring. It's some older gentleman who asked for me specifically. Speaking, I say. Our conversation goes a little something like this.
Is this OP?
Yeah, how can I help?
Well, my daughter just returned a rental car at your location, and I see a $25 fuel charge on there that shouldn't be. I'm expecting a refund right now, or I'll be giving corporate a call, and maybe you'll listen to them.
I'm still keeping my cool at this point. Not a problem, sir. Let me check your file to verify that you didn't prepay for the fuel. Let me put you on a quick hold. The entitled dad starts screaming something along the lines of,
"Don't put me on hold. No one puts me on hold."
Beep goes on hold anyway. I then check his file. The notes clearly say that fuel was declined, and the customer signed a line stating that they agree to a $25 refueling fee if they don't return it with the amount of fuel that it was sent out with. Hi sir, I say. I've reviewed your file, and unfortunately I'm not able to issue a refund, because your daughter agreed to pay the fuel charge if the vehicle wasn't returned at the level we sent it out at. Apologies for the inconvenience, but we do make this clear to our customers, since this is a common but understandable source of confusion. Now, had this guy started the convo off by not being a POS, I would have easily given him his refund, but I refused to let entitled mofos win.
What the F? Oh, I see. You just saw a young girl walk into your rental car place, and you thought that you could scam her? Well, how does it feel robbing a young girl of $25? I'll bet you have the money in your pocket right now.
Sir, unfortunately, that is our policy. We do not scam our customers and clearly indicate what you will be paying for before the rental. We also make sure to tell you how to avoid the fees. In this case, our advice was not followed, so we'll not be able to process a refund for you.
Let me talk to a manager, now.
Sorry sir, they're not in the office right now, but I'll tell you, they will give you the same answer. They should be back in about 20 to 30 minutes if you want to call back then. Again, super chill managers, so I knew I had nothing to worry about, and that of course they would take my side.
What the heck? No, some of us have things to do today. I don't want to spend my day at some rental car place. You guys are scumbags. You know what? I'm coming down there right now, and I'm going to have a little talk with you face to face. You're not going to be so tough when I come down.
Sorry, he just said that some of us have things to do today, yet he's willing to come down to the car rental place. Makes a lot of sense. Make it make sense, please. Now, unfortunately, at this moment, all I could do was audibly laugh at this guy, which only made it worse. I'm looking forward to it, sir.
You just think you're so tough, don't you? You've got no idea the people in high places that I know in this state. I now know your first and last name, buddy. I wouldn't be laughing.
Sir, if you have any problem with me, I invite you to come down and resolve it in person. I'll be here until 6 this evening.
I'm coming right now, buddy. You think I'm not serious?
Alright then, see you soon. And I hang up. About 20 minutes later, my manager gets back, and I tell him what happened. My manager burst out laughing and just said, "Can we hear?" We went back and listened to the recording, and both my manager and assistant were just dying laughing.
Were you just threatened over $25?
Apparently, I joked. We all shared a good laugh, and honestly forgot about it for the rest of the afternoon. until I saw a car pull up and I saw a familiar girl get out of the car with what looked like her mum. Guess who? It was the entitled dad's daughter and her mum. I peered into the car to see that entitled dad pouting in the passenger seats. He looked like a child that was told no for the first time. The best part is, he threatened me and then wouldn't even get out of the car to face me himself. He sends his wife and daughter in to do his dirty work. This should give you some indication about the type of guy we're dealing with here. The entitled mum walks in with the entitled daughter and starts screaming, berating my assistant manager. Your employee needs to be fired. He scammed my daughter out of money and we want it back. Mom, OP already explained to you why we can't do that. I'll give you two choices. You can leave now on your own, or I can call the police and they can tell you to leave. Up to you. Okay then, F you. We're never using this rental car place again. I can't wait until we call corporate and tell them all about this little incident. She furiously leaves the shop and goes back to her car. This is where the most amazing thing happened and made me believe in karma. She was so angry and flustered as she was backing out that she slammed into the back of my assistant manager's car, smashing the bumper. Easily a total loss for a car of that age and value. My assistant manager runs out to inspect the damage, only to find nothing on his car, not even a single scratch. The entitled parents and their daughter all had to wait for a tow truck to arrive in our parking lot, and it was amazing to watch the look on their faces while they dealt with the side effects of their trashiness. As if that wasn't enough. Want to know what the best part was? 2 weeks later, I get a call from that same entitled dad, asking if we had any rental cars available. It was hilarious how he tried to act as if nothing had happened and returned after he vowed he wouldn't. He actually rented fairly regularly after that during my time there, and we never had another issue with him. He was even pleasant on some occasions. This experience must have been humbling for him. Anyway, that's my story. I hope you guys enjoyed it. As I'm thinking about my past, I realized that I've actually got plenty of stories. So if you guys like this one and want to hear more, I'd appreciate the positive feedback. I want to hear more immediately, sir. Well then guys, if you do want to see more from OP, to be fair, great story, well written. I loved reading it. Do comment down below that you want to see more and drop a like on this video so that I know to look out for more stories from this man. Speaking of men, it's actually very funny. It's almost confusing, right? This entitled dad was like so mental. He just went crazy, shouting at people for no reason, demanding a massive $25 refund. And then after this huge debacle, you know, where their car gets totaled, he's like, actually, I've learnt my lesson here. And now that we no longer have a car, I'm gonna need another rental car. So if you take me back, guys, at the rental place, yeah, I'll go back to being a normal customer who doesn't shout and abuse people. Cheers. I mean, it would have been better if he didn't do all that abusing in the first place, but anyway, at least he got to some form of solid conclusion. I don't know. All right then, story number 3. Random butthole thinks he's entitled to my medical history. I want to preface this by saying that it's appallingly common for disabled people to be asked personal medical questions by total strangers, and that nothing about that is okay. Just don't do that, like ever. Far too many able people seem to think that being disabled in public means that my life story is public property, and it makes going anywhere far more stressful and tiring than it should be. To anyone who does this, your curiosity does not justify or excuse your rude, invasive questions, regardless of your intentions. 1 in 4 people has a disability. Disabilities and disabled people are normal, and I'm sick to death of being treated like a sideshow curiosity. Now, with that context in mind, I'm sure you won't be surprised to know that I had absolutely zero patience for today's entitled butthole's accusational nosiness. I was in a pharmacy with my walking cane, and as the person being served before me was taking some time, I went to sit down in one of the chairs they have for people waiting on prescriptions. I dropped mine off earlier in the day, so I was only there for pickup. As I'd been standing around, I'd noticed an elderly man, can't have been younger than 75, on a mobility scooter, scrutinizing me. When I sat down, he drove his scooter over to me and, without so much as a hi, he asked, "What's a healthy young thing like you doing with one of those?" gesturing at my cane. His tone was actually accusational and full of suspicion. As I said, this is something that most disabled people often have to deal with, And that goes triple for young disabled people. So many older people seem to think that young people just can't be disabled, I guess. It makes zero goddamn sense, but whatever. My point is that after years of experience, I've got a list of well-rehearsed responses to draw from. So, without missing a beat, I told him, my medical history is none of your business. He seemed pretty taken aback and scoffed, saying, I was only asking, there's no need to be so rude. Again, having been here before, I said, no, you asking a total stranger invasive questions about their personal, medical situation, that's rude. Me declining to answer is not. It's called having reasonable boundaries. He scoffed again and glared at me for a bit, seemingly unable to think of a comeback. But then he did the thing that prompted me to post this otherwise run-of-the-mill encounter here. While maintaining eye contact and glaring daggers at me, he slowly reversed his scooter, beeping all the way, back towards the far end of the front counter, where he'd been to start with. Only he bumped into the woman who'd been ahead of me en route, ruining his bizarrely dramatic exit and sparking an entirely separate argument. It was honestly farcical. Not much happened after that. His prescriptions were ready first, but this guy insisted on glaring at me the entire goddamn time. Of course, I gave him a wave as he departed, and he flushed red with rage, but said nothing. Moral of the story, disabled people don't owe you anything. Leave us the heck alone, and for crying out loud, don't ask us personal questions like you're entitled to our medical histories. Now look, I'm not the sort of person that would randomly go up to a disabled person and ask them how they got their disability. That is very rude. But even me, knowing that I'd never do that, it's still important to hear from a disabled person how annoying that can be. I mean, maybe you're with your mate or, a family member and they do it, and you think about this story and you think, you know what, I'm going to intervene here and tell my friend, relative, whatever, to not ask these horribly intrusive personal questions that they have absolutely no business of knowing. Also, with the Paralympics on at the moment, I thought I'd bring you guys this story to help raise a little bit of awareness among our small, viewership community about disabled people and how they feel when they get asked very personal questions. Look, I imagine some of you watching right now are disabled. Comment down below. Is it very annoying? I imagine it is. And now moving on to our final story of today's episode. Lady gets mad because I'm speaking Norwegian to a tour group in Norway. First of all, I think my English is pretty good for it being my second language, but I still may make mistakes. Second, this took place a couple of years ago, so my memory and translations may not be exact, but you should get the general idea. And thirdly, all conversations are translated to English, especially the ones between the director and me. Background and story. About 2 years ago, when I was in university, before the virus, I worked as a tour guide in Oslo during summers. We would take groups out on a bus through the city, then get on a boat and continue the tour from there. When the group first formed, I would ask if there were any English speakers who didn't understand Norwegian. If there were, I would conduct the tour in Norwegian first, then give the English equivalents. If there weren't, I would just do the whole thing in Norwegian, but also point out in English, we all speak English, right, that there was an audio system they could listen to in multiple languages. So, Germans could hear it in German, French people in French, etc. I think there are about 10 different languages in all to choose from. I eventually learned how to say each language we offered in their native language, and then motioned to the headphones and guide in front of them that said how to turn the audio to their preferred language. So, I asked my group and a few people raised their hands. I don't recall if this lady was one of them. So, the tour started and I would point out the sites and describe them in Norwegian, then English. However, as I was giving the Norwegian explanation, this lady would yell out, "English!" After a couple times, I finally stopped myself and said, "In a minute, please wait," though I'd already spoken English on the trip, including the opening talk. This woman, though, continued through the entire tour. Though this was not a supper cruise, which we had in the evenings, we still had a wait staff that circulated around and got people snacks and drinks. They normally ask first in Norwegian what people want, then switch to English, or in some cases Swedish or German, until they learned which language went with which customer. When they got to this lady, she gave her order and then said, "Make the guide speak English. Me and my kids can't understand her." When they pointed out that I was speaking English after the Norwegian, she said, How do I know she's saying the same thing though? She should just speak English the whole time. The next day, my director, I don't know the exact translation of his title, called me to his office before I began my first outing of the day and said that he had received a comment card about me not speaking English and that this had ruined the tour for a woman and her kids. He asked me if this was true, and I said no. I spoke both Norwegian and English on the trip after I found out there were some non-Norwegian speakers. Since the tour for the day hadn't gone out yet, I got 2 servers, including the one who had served them, who came up and verified that I had spoken in both languages. My director just shook his head, tore up the comment card, and told me to move on with my day. I wish I'd gotten the chance to have a direct confrontation with this lady. Many people would stop and thank me or ask questions as they left the boat at the end of the tour. But this lady was not one of them. She just resorted to speaking badly about me on a comment card. Oh, look, I'm not positive it was her, but the clues all point in her direction. So, that is the story of how I got in trouble for not speaking English in Norway. So there we go, guys. That is it. A few hours of some of the very best, most relaxing Reddit stories that I could find. Really hope you enjoyed this. If you did and you're still not asleep and you want even more relaxing Reddit content, check out this video on screen. It's even more hours of chilled out stories. If you're new to the channel and you haven't already done so, make sure to hit the subscribe button or follow button on whatever platform you're on, and I'll catch you on the next one.